They had already compromised slightly for him. Was he so determined to court death? Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Right at this moment, exclamations suddenly rang out from below, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Ling Han cast a look outside from a window of the tower and saw that there was indeed an attack. Their numbers were not few, over 100 people, and it was 2 celestial kings leading them. The others were only in the ascending origin tier. Huh. Ling Han appeared slightly surprised. Those ascending origin tiers were one thing, but there was clearly an outsider among the 2 celestial kings. He had just broken through not too long ago, so his aura wasn't very stable yet. It was clear from first glance. To leave this place, and for the sake of the potential treasure that could have appeared in the central zone, the outsiders had also joined this war. Furthermore, they were playing the role of lackeys. Yang Gang's expression changed drastically. The enemy had actually mobilized 2 celestial kings. This indicated that they were determined to conquer this tower. Furthermore, it had not just been a few years that he had stood guard here. He had to have been thoroughly investigated, and now that the other party had mobilized 2 celestial kings, they should have complete confidence that they could take him down. Thankfully, the party on defense had an extremely strong advantage. As long as they prevented the other party from entering into the tower, the latter would have to sustain the restraints of the power of the ruins, causing their battle prowess to drop drastically. In a battle of 1 against 2, it was not definite that he would lose, either. He glanced at Ling Han and the others, and hesitated for a moment. Finally, gritting his teeth, he did not say anything. If Bewitching Maiden Row was going to attack him, he would not be able to stop her either. Thus, he simply chose to act as if they were not there. He stood guard on the 7th floor, his celestial king divine sense reaching all corners. No matter which direction the enemy attacked from, he would still be able to react in time. Outside, the 100-plus ascending origin tiers were charging towards the entrance to the 1st floor, and the 2 celestial kings had split ways. One attacked from upwards, while the other invaded from downwards, planning to charge into the structure. It was really too disadvantageous if they stayed outside. Boom! One celestial king was wrapped in ice, his battle prowess suddenly shooting countless folds upward. He had broken through Yang Gang's defense and directly charged inside. Ling Han was surprised. Previously, this celestial king had clearly ignored the restraints of the purple light. This was illogical. Yang Gang was astonished. You people have truly gone to great expense for this that you could bear to use even the subduing purple fruit. Under the suppression of the purple light, cultivators would not be able to unleash more than 10% of their original battle prowess, and according to the deductions of the celestial kings, this purple light was exuded by those plants. But as long as they consumed the fruits that these plants bore, they would be able to temporarily ignore the restraints of the purple light. Of course, this truly was just temporary. It lasted for a pitifully short time period. Thus, as there were effects of subduing and dispelling the restrictions of the purple light, these fruits were naturally called subduing purple fruit. But it should be known that these plants were extremely troublesome, and even celestial kings could possibly experience a great loss against them. So how difficult would it be to obtain a subduing purple fruit? These fruits definitely had to be stored up, to be consumed only when the great opportunity arose in the future, yet they had now been used here, which showed how resolute and determined the other party was to conquer this place. Yang Gang, since you already know how determined we are, leave, one of the celestial kings shouted. Yang Gang humphed. Even if I fight the 2 of you, it is not assured that I will lose. Moreover, I have already sent out a signal, and the reinforcements will arrive shortly. When he said these words, he tossed a glance purposefully at Ling Han and his group, indicating, "You guys heard that too, right? The reinforcements will soon arrive, so you had better not think of any wild ideas." Those 2 celestial kings also glanced at Ling Han and his group, and when they discovered that there was another celestial king there, their eyes involuntarily narrowed. Fuck, there was an error in their intelligence. Why was there another celestial king here? Yet Ling Han waved a hand and said smilingly, "No need to bother about us. Just go ahead and do whatever. We are only passing by and will not interfere." Grandmaster Ling. that outsider celestial king called out in spite of himself. He was an emperor tier of the Eastern Celestial Realm, and the fact that he had managed to break through to the Celestial King tier itself was praiseworthy. Ordinarily, emperor tiers would need to walk the celestial path 3 times and above to be able to break through, and if they could not succeed within 3 times, unless they were willing to eternally stay on the celestial path, there would definitely be no chance that they would become celestial kings. Chapter 2467, Conquering a Base for Fun. Chapter 2467, Conquering a Base for Fun. Grandmaster Ling? The other celestial king and Yang Gang both turned to look at Ling Han. This was only a pseudo-celestial king. How was he worthy of being addressed as Grandmaster by a celestial king? The other celestial king looked towards Ling Han and said after a slight pause, "Friend Zhu, there were 2 celestial kings on the other side, and their operations would possibly be affected. However, if their companion could make the celestial king on the other side betray his side, in a battle of 3 against 1, their chances of victory could not be any more assured." This outsider celestial king bore the surname of Zhu, and his name was Zhu Zishi. He chuckled and made introductions for both sides while introducing himself as well. "Grandmaster Ling, I am Zhu Zishi. This is Lu Ming, Friend Lu. Friend Lu, this is Grandmaster Ling, the youngest 5-star alchemist in the history of our Eastern Celestial Realm, and is presently also the only 5-star alchemist." "Oh, so it is Grandmaster Ling." Lu Ming hurriedly bowed towards Ling Han, appearing very polite. There weren't any 5-star alchemists on the celestial path, so everyone naturally did not know how they were supposed to treat a 5-star alchemist, but for the sake of Zhu Zishi and bewitching Maiden Ro, Lu Ming was willing to see Ling Han as an equal. Of course, if he knew that Ling Han's vitality index was actually as high as 5,600 points, and his strength was far superior, this Grandmaster Ling would be even more polite and respectful. As he saw it, to lower himself to the same level was already giving Ling Han enough face. What else could he ask for? Ling Han could tell what he was thinking and only responded with a slight smile. "Friend Lu." Yang Gang frowned. If these few people cultivated relations, his situation would become worse. Though it was impossible that he would die, there was a 99% chance that he would not be able to keep this base. He hurriedly said, "Grandmaster Ling, there was some neglect in my reception just now. Please bear with me." All he had to do was cause a delay. As long as he could delay until his reinforcements came, he naturally would not have any more lingering worries. Ling Han chuckled. "I have already said before, we are only passing by and will not interfere. You guys just continue doing whatever you will." Since that is the case, Lu Ming immediately looked menacingly towards Yang Gang. As long as bewitching Maiden Ro did not interfere, they, 2 celestial kings, naturally had a full chance of victory. Yang Gang could also accept this result. He was sure he could delay until reinforcements came. Boom! Lu Ming was the first to move. He sent out a palm strike with his right palm, extracting the regulations of water, which turned into a colossal spear of ice, stabbing towards Yang Gang. Zhu Zishi did not stand idly, either. He, too, extracted regulations, and black flames immediately rose from the ground as gravity soared countless times in a split second. Even a celestial king would have trouble moving. Yang Gang frowned. The cooperation between them was quite good. One was responsible for restraining the target, with the regulations of gravity limiting his mobility, while the other was responsible for attacking. The ice spear was cold and menacing, capable of freezing even celestial king blood. Fortunately, Zhu Zishi was a weakness. He had the aptitude of an emperor tier, but because he had just broken through to the celestial king tier, his battle prowess was far weaker than Yang Gang's. Hence, this kind of limitation was not hard for Yang Gang to dispel. With a burst of power and a flash of gleaming silver, he aggressively charged out and shot out a punch. A golden sword formed out of nowhere, greeting the spear of ice. Boom! The golden sword and icy spear clashed, and both immediately crumbled, turning into regulations which returned to the heaven and earth. Yang Gang was slightly weaker. After all, he had been disturbed by Zhu Zishi and could not unleash his full battle prowess. This result was also within the expectations of the three great celestial kings. Hence, none of them showed any hint of shock or disappointment, and battle arose once more. The three great celestial kings battled fiercely. Yang Gang was constantly at a disadvantage, but he was also defending very stubbornly. Going by the look of things now, there was absolutely no problem for him to last a few or even over a dozen days. Hence, even though Yang Gang was clearly being suppressed, his expression was completely calm. It would only take around 2 days at most for the reinforcements to arrive. Hee, did you think that there would be reinforcements? Ling smirked. I don't mind telling you. This time, we have mobilized a total of 6 celestial kings, and we are attacking 3 of your bases at the same time. Now, the 2 nearest bases should be waiting earnestly for reinforcements as well, so just give up. Hearing these words, Yang Gang couldn't help but look stunned. If it was really like what the other party said, the situation was really too bad. Humph, the peaceful underworld celestial king has only recruited 18 celestial kings, and has now sent out 6 of them all in one stroke. Doesn't he worry that his base would be left undefended? Yang Gang asked darkly. The more terrible his situation was, the more he could not allow himself to panic. Ling laughed loudly. There is no need for Brother Yang to worry about that. The peaceful underworld celestial king was the strongest celestial king of Ming's party. He was at the peak stage of the 3rd heaven and naturally belonged to the strongest ranks on the celestial path. The strongest celestial king of the party that Yang Gang belonged to was the 9th descent celestial king, who similarly was at the peak stage of the 3rd heaven. Without this kind of cultivation level, they would not be worthy of commanding a troop of celestial kings. Yang Gang frowned deeply. What gave the peaceful underworld celestial king the right to be so daring? It should be known that they were all contending, and judging by the present situation, whoever had hold of more bases would possess a stronger say. Now that the peaceful underworld celestial king had sent out 6 celestial kings, their base naturally had to be absolutely empty. No matter what, it did not seem logical. Hee, the peaceful underworld celestial king can ally with the Crimson Snow celestial king. So how could it be that the 9th descent celestial king can't? A voice suddenly rang out from outside, and a man enshrouded in a peculiar light strode inside from the window, a calm smile adorning his face. Friend Qian. Yang Gang was immediately overjoyed. This newly arrived celestial king was named Qian Xiang, and was also of the line of the 9th descent celestial king. Of course, he was not a subordinate. Everyone had only formed a temporary alliance for the sake of contending for that treasure that would help them leave the celestial path. Qian Xiang. Ming's eyes narrowed instantly. Not only had the former's arrival thrown a wrench into their plans, the words that the other party had said had also shocked him greatly. The reason why the line of the peaceful underworld celestial king had been able to send over 6 celestial kings was because they had formed an alliance with the line of the Crimson Snow celestial king, but they had never imagined that the 9th descent celestial king had also formed an alliance of mutual attack and defense with other forces. Their previous advantage was now completely gone. Ha 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 ha. Yang Gang laughed loudly. Come. Since you guys want to battle, let us battle to the fullest. Zhu Zixi's eyes turned, and he said, Grandmaster Ling, we are all residents of the celestial realm, so please lend me a helping hand. The peaceful underworld celestial king only wishes to leave the celestial path, and that is the same for myself as well, so we decided to rake in some treasures while we were at it. However, we definitely have no desire for that perfect celestial seed. Thus, as long as Grandmaster Ling is willing to lend us some help, I have great confidence that I can convince the peaceful underworld celestial king to gift this celestial seed to Grandmaster Ling. Hearing his words, both Yang Gang and Qian Xiang frowned. Now, it was a battle of 2 against 2, and the number of celestial kings on both sides was equal, but if Ling Han and his group joined either side, mainly, it was about bewitching Maiden Row. She was a celestial king, and whichever side she joined, that side would be able to gain a complete advantage. Grandmaster Ling, we can offer such conditions as well? Yang Gang said immediately. Naturally, there was no way he could allow Zhu Zixi to pull a celestial king over to their side. Grandmaster Ling, please believe in me. Grandmaster Ling, we have greater sincerity. Both sides were stretching out an olive branch to Ling Han. Of course, they had ulterior motives. Their main purpose was to get hold of the Celestial King tier battle prowess represented by bewitching Maiden Row. Ling Han smiled and said to the Empress and the others, "Why don't we, too, conquer a base for fun?" Chapter 2468. Little Terror Unleashes Its Might. Chapter 2468. Little Terror Unleashes Its Might. When Ling Han's words fell, both Zhu Zishi and Yang Gang immediately showed hints of anger and confusion in their expressions. You guys only have a single Celestial King in your party, and it's one that has just broken through recently at that, and you actually want to conquer a base? What do you think a base is? Is it something that you can conquer just by thinking about it? Even Third Heaven Celestial Kings had experienced multiple bloody battles before finally managing to take occupation of them. Because when these towers appeared, they would be wrapped with various plants, which had great power. These needed to be cleared away before the tower could be occupied, and it was not something that could be done by one who was not a Third Heaven Celestial King. And you guys want to take advantage of a Third Heaven Celestial King? Isn't that just courting death? Bases could not be lost. Others might not know it, but Celestial Kings who had stayed here for a long time like them knew it very well. When midnight came, a mysterious light would shine from within the tower, allowing them a glimpse of supreme Great Tao, with a mysterious fragrance that would advance their cultivation levels. Though this would only last for a short while, it was still equivalent to the Celestial Kings cultivating earnestly for several million years. And what was most important, this could help them break through, even. Moreover, the more towers occupied, the stronger this light and fragrance would be, and this was the fundamental reason that the Celestial Kings had gathered into alliances together. Why did they not simply choose to gather themselves all together into one group, then? To speak of nothing else, merely the joint forces of these Third Heaven Celestial Kings should be capable of sweeping aside everything else before them. It was because this mysterious light and fragrance could only be shared among a limited number of people. Even if they occupied an extremely great number, it would only boost the effects of the light and fragrance, and could not increase the number of people that it could be shared among. Hence, a single team could only have a dozen to 20 Celestial Kings at most, or everyone would have to take turns. Under this kind of prerequisite, everyone could only split ways and battle on their own, with a Third Heaven Celestial King gathering a great many Second Heaven and First Heaven Celestial Kings under his authority as their leader. Additionally, the closer they were to the central area, the higher the grade of the towers was. Thus, only lower-tier Celestial Kings would be guarding the outer circles, while Third Heaven Celestial Kings would be fighting for those better towers. But the closer to the central area, the smaller the territory became, and the number of towers was definitely decreasing as well. Hence, not only would they have to battle those mysterious plants, they also had to clash with powerful competitors. The fighting was extremely cruel, and the Third Heaven Celestial Kings could not free themselves to interfere in the battles that were going on behind the lines at all. Hee, Grandmaster Ling is really such a joker. Zhu Zishi hurriedly laughed, playing mediator. Ling Han's face bore a calm smile. Though his knowledge was limited, he definitely did not believe that Celestial Kings were sent out as guards just for the sake of a stepping stone or supply station, and this had even drawn the invasion of 2 other Celestial Kings. There had to be some other reason. Then things were simple. He only had to conquer one, and he could slowly study to find out the reason. Wasn't this place a place where power was the only rule? Weren't the towers here conquered through battle? There are indeed times that I would joke, but this clearly is not one of them. Ling Han swept an eye over and said to Zhu Zishi, "As an outsider myself, I will give you a word of advice. Join our side and become my subordinate. How about it?" Zhu Zishi's expression instantly darkened. Though he had addressed Ling Han as Grandmaster, that did not mean he really respected Ling Han all that much. He had only thought that he might have a need of Ling Han's skill in alchemy in the future, and that was why he had been polite. It should be known that Zhu Zishi was a Celestial King by now. To speak of nothing else, weren't the words Celestial King enough? Not only did this Ling Han refuse his kindness, he actually wanted to recruit him as a lackey. Just how far would he go to humiliate him? He declared menacingly, "I'm afraid I will have to disappoint Grandmaster Ling's kind offer. I have no intentions of becoming anyone's lackey." He had broken through on his first trip into the celestial path, which showed that his natural talent was still extremely high. Then, his future accomplishments would not just be limited to first heaven. In fact, he had hopes of reaching even third heaven and fourth heaven. How could he lower himself to become someone's subordinate? Ling Han sighed. This guy really thought that the former was insulting him. It should be known that even monarch tiers like Yin Xinlu and Yi had willingly become his lackeys, and their future accomplishments would be becoming a fifth heaven celestial king, at the very least. Forget it. Ling Han had only spoken on a whim himself, and had not really wanted to get someone so mediocre as subordinate. Hee, since Grandmaster Ling is so overbearing, why don't we call a truce first and eliminate Grandmaster Ling and his party? Yang Gang suggested. These words were directed at Lu Ming, however. Sure. Lu Ming nodded smilingly. There was only a single celestial king in Ling Han's group. If the four great celestial kings joined forces against them, they would be able to very quickly suppress or chase them off so as to prevent Ling Han's group from benefiting from the conflict between them. This time, Zhu Zishi did not say anything. He thought that this was what Ling Han had asked for. A five-star Grandmaster was indeed very powerful in the celestial realm, but on the celestial path? The four great celestial kings immediately turned from enemies into allies. At the very least, they were completely on the same page regarding dealing with Ling Han and his group first. Ling Han smiled and tossed Little Terror out. Go! The little guy had gotten impatient long ago and had been baring its fangs. Now that it had gotten Ling Han's permission, it immediately charged out in a flurry of its strong, broad legs, its mouth open, emanating a chilling aura. The four celestial kings felt a chill rise up their backs at the same time, as if their opponent was not a tiny beast that was only 2 feet tall, but an extraordinary beast of the ancient age whose killing intent soared to the heavens, as if it was a killing machine. They each made their move, wanting to stop Little Terror from coming closer. But what was Little Terror? A battle beast that the heaven and earth of the foreign realm had deliberately created to deal with the dark inverse realm. It was an existence that was even more terrifying than a war soldier. Not only was its battle prowess that of a monarch star, no questions about it being able to sweep aside all peers, its defense was also incredibly tough. In fact, it could even be compared with the physique that Ling Han had formed through cultivating the indestructible Heaven Scroll. The moment this kind of battle machine broke through to the Celestial King tier, what would it mean? Its vitality index would be as high as 4,600 points, and its defense was something that would drive even a first heaven Celestial King to despair. Pong, pong, pong. It directly ignored the attacks of the four great Celestial Kings. When they landed on it, only a series of dazzling sparks were created. They could not harm it in the slightest. Little Terror charged towards them, opened its bloody, gaping mouth, and bit at Lu Ming. Lu Ming hurriedly grabbed hold of Great Dao and whipped it outwards, yet Little Terror snapped it in half and still determinedly directed a bite at his lower body. It could not be helped. Little Terror was too short and tiny, so it could only aim at this position. Lu Ming's face was livid. If Little Terror bit off his asterisk, how would he still have the face to see others in the future? Yang Gang and the other great celestial kings moved at the same time, blasting at Little Terror. Pong, the combined forces of 3 great celestial kings still held some power, stopping Little Terror's figure slightly, which allowed Lu Ming to escape this calamity. Little Terror was enraged. This was its first battle since becoming a celestial king, and it had actually not come out on top. It charged out again, extremely vicious. So what if the 4 great celestial kings joined forces? They could only escape in a panic, with Little Terror hot on their tails. Ling Han nodded. Little Terror was truly a crore that had been purposely created by a realm through a back door. It was extremely impressive, and was created for the sole purpose of battle. However, precisely because of that, it was very limited as well, as its intelligence was slightly low. Otherwise, if it could cultivate like Ling Han and the others, its battle prowess would definitely be even stronger. Ling Han could not be too discontented. This kind of little terror was already very powerful. As his thoughts wandered, the four great celestial kings were already scrambling all over the place with little terror pursuing them and could no longer withstand it. Finally, they had no choice but to jump out of the window and flee. Chapter 2469, Yielding. Chapter 2469, Yielding. Ling Han did not tell Little Terror to pursue them. They had no great grudge between them, and their conflict was merely for the sake of contending for a tower, so there was no need to fight over it to death. He cast out all the subordinates of the other two celestial kings, and then conducted a thorough search. Why does this seem like a precious tool? After a very long while, Ling Han came to a conclusion had discovered a structure that was akin to the core of a precious tool inside the tower, and a spiritual mark could be engraved on it, making it into your own. However, the spiritual mark of another was presently left here. It should belong to the 9th Descent Celestial King. Ling Han dared not be careless. Though he was very strong, he had not become a Celestial King yet, after all. A third heaven Celestial King was still too strong for him, and he cautiously touched the spiritual mark. Boom! An ancient, aged intent immediately rushed towards him, turning into a gray-robed man inside Ling Han's mind. He was just in his 20s and looked dashingly handsome, but age and maturity that came from seeing through the world of mortals seeped from his eyes. The 9th Descent Celestial King. Ling Han smiled faintly, clasped his hands, and greeted, "Greetings, Lord 9th Descent." The 9th Descent Celestial King also smiled. "Since I have manifested in your mind, it means that you have already occupied this base." Ling Han nodded. "That's right. However, it is one matter for you to conquer this base, but a completely another matter to see if you can take possession of it," the 9th Descent Celestial King declared proudly. "Though I am only a sliver of divine sense, you are but a first heaven yourself. You have not advanced into the Celestial King tier." He saw how there was a celestial seed that had not taken form yet in Ling Han's mind. Its existence meant only one thing, and that was Ling Han had not broken through to the Celestial King tier yet. The 9th Descent Celestial King was extremely shocked. He could clearly feel that Ling Han's divine sense was incredibly strong, and had definitely crossed over the threshold of the Celestial King tier, but Ling Han himself had not broken through to the Celestial King tier yet. There was an extreme strangeness about this. What in the world was going on? Ling Han asked seriously, "If Lord 9th Descent is willing to part with it and disperse this sliver of divine sense on your own volition, then I would owe my lord a favor. How about it?" If a pseudo-celestial king actually dared pose such a question to a third heaven celestial king, it would practically make others laugh themselves to death, but the 9th Descent Celestial King did not feel the slightest bit amused. Instead, he was seriously considering the matter. After a while, he suddenly smiled. "All right, I will gift this base to you. However, I also hope that you don't invade one of my other bases next time." As he saw it, though Ling Han's present battle prowess was below his notice, he was a man of great ambition and was not satisfied with such a small place like the Celestial Path. He wanted to obtain a great opportunity and make his way into the Celestial Realm. In that case, just how frightening could someone who had not yet attained Celestial King tier but already possessed the battle prowess of a Celestial King be? Ling Han's future accomplishments were definitely boundless. After weighing the pros and cons, he was willing to use a base to trade for a favor from Ling Han. Xiao, this sliver of his divine sense, immediately departed, shooting towards the heart of the ruins. This Celestial King was really quite interesting, Ling Han smiled. If the 9th Descent Celestial King was not willing to yield, Ling Han would not fear a battle either. After all, the other was only a sliver of divine sense. So just how inconceivably strong could it be? Ling Han imprinted his own divine sense on this tower. When he had left behind a sliver of divine sense, he suddenly felt that he seemed to have gained a connection with this tower, allowing him to obtain a considerable amount of information. Ling Han shockingly discovered that the Black Tower, which had been in slumber all this while, suddenly shook slightly, but immediately, no further movement could be detected. Strange. Was this the Black Tower just waking up for a short while in the midst of slumber, or was it because he had taken possession of this tower? Otherwise, this was really too coincidental. But he had only taken ownership of a tower, so why would it cause a reaction from the Black Tower? Though it was an incredibly weak reaction. Never mind for now. Ling Han spoke to the three women. Later, when midnight came, a bizarre phenomenon would occur, and if they cultivated at that time, the effects would be greatly increased. The midnight here referred to the shift of day and night of the celestial path. Hence, this kind of change would only take place once every 3 days in actuality. They were only 18 hours away from midnight and had to wait patiently. When the time came, a streak of light shot out from the top of the tower, ignoring all the levels of obstruction and penetrating all the way through to the first floor. At the same time, a peculiar fragrance was also wafting in the air, causing one to feel like they were about to sprout wings and fly. Ling Han and the others all extracted the light, smelling the fragrance, and suddenly felt the celestial seed in their bodies was rapidly growing. Bewitching Maiden Ro's celestial seed mark had already sprouted and grown. Thus, this was most helpful for her. Her cultivation level was rapidly increasing, and because their celestial seed marks had not formed yet, the assistance it provided for Ling Han and the others was far below the one Bewitching Maiden Ro enjoyed, though there was ultimately some help. They could only decide to immediately advance into the Celestial King tier if they wanted more. Only Little Terror did not get the slightest bit of benefit. It belonged to an alternative cultivation system. Even if Wally had done some modifications for it, it did not form any celestial seed while breaking through to the Celestial King tier, so there was naturally no way for it to benefit further. This kind of benefit did not last very long. After around 30 minutes had passed, the light suddenly disappeared, and the peculiar fragrance was also swiftly dispersing and could no longer be smelled. "Are we going to continue charging ahead?" the Empress asked. "The deeper in, the greater the benefits of this tower, but there would also be more towers, and they, too, could generate some amazing benefits. But there were only 4 of them, so what could they do even if they conquered another tower? Without adequate manpower, there was no way for them to keep it in their possession. If they were concerned for the front, they would not be able to concern themselves with the rear. No wonder the 9th Descent Celestial King had previously sent people to recruit passers-by. After all, there were only a few people with Celestial King tier battle prowess, and they were in dire need of replenishment. Should we also recruit some helpers? Ling Han and the others decided to wait for another while longer. With their present battle prowess, they were still not strong enough to contend with Third Heaven Celestial Kings, so even if they went into the heart of the ruins, it would be completely useless as well because that was above their pay grade. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. They had obtained the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance 5 times, causing Ling Han and the others to rapidly complete their celestial seed mark. Meanwhile, Bewitching Maiden Ro was advancing strongly towards the middle stage of the first heaven. Initially, this process would take a few 100 million or even billion years, but who asked Bewitching Maiden Ro to cultivate a time celestial physique? Others could only cultivate for a while, yet she could have a time extension of over 100 times. How could this be compared? Another few days later, Ling Han shockingly discovered that there were presently 5 people coming together. 5 Celestial Kings. Had the peaceful underworld Celestial King been displeased with the failure of his first invasion, and had thus sent 5 Celestial Kings in a second attempt? However, even 4 Celestial Kings working together had been driven into a tizzy by Little Terror, so what was the use of having an additional Celestial King? When these 5 people had come a bit closer, Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised, because he recognized all 5 of them. Yin Xinlu, Cheng Zixin, He Xinjue, and Fu Zhou. They were all members of the alliance. Ling Han laughed and leaped out. "Brother Ling." When Yi and the others spotted Ling Han, they couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, filled with pleasant surprise. Come in quickly," Ling Han beckoned them inside. There were restraints of the purple light outside, which would cause a massive drop in battle prowess. Only the towers here were capable of resisting this kind of pressure. The group entered into the tower and spoke of their respective experiences. They were all filled with danger, especially in the case of Yin Xinlu, who had been targeted and almost captured by 7 great celestial kings Yuwudi had been part of. "Brother Ling, you didn't fall for it, did you?" Yin Xinlu asked. When Yuwudi and his group had attacked him, they had spoken a few scattered words about planning to use him as a trap against Ling Han. Chapter 2470, Reunion. Chapter 2470, Reunion. "It's all right." Ling Han shook his head, smiling. "Brother Yin, you need not be bothered about it. Aside from Yuwudi, I have killed all the other 6. Yin Xinlu was stunned. Even when he had broken through to the Celestial King tier, he could only escape, but Ling Han was clearly still a pseudo-Celestial King, and actually said that he had killed 6 of the Celestial Kings. This was too exaggerated, wasn't it? In a situation when the gap between cultivation levels wasn't too wide, it was as difficult as ascending the heavens for a Celestial King to kill another Celestial King. But was Ling Han the type to boast excessively? "Brother Ling, you are too extraordinary." The 5 great Celestial Kings could only be impressed. Ling Han smiled slightly. If he broke through to the Celestial King tier, his battle prowess would soar to the peak stage of the 2nd Heaven Celestial King tier in terms of regulations, and once the upper limit of his cultivation level was lifted in terms of body art, who knew just how strong he would be? This could only be known after he had advanced into the Celestial King tier. Speaking of the benefits this tower offered, E and the others were all overjoyed. It had not been very long since their breakthrough, and they were in need of stabilizing their cultivation level. This would be the perfect place for them to cultivate. "We will go to the next tower, and after we conquer it and engrave a similar mark, there will be a resonance between the towers. By that time, you guys can make your way there," Ling Han said. He had just been worrying about having no one to guard the tower for him. "All right." E and the others did not refuse. Ling Han and his group departed, setting out towards the heart of the ruins. However, they did not progress on a straight path. Because of his promise to the 9th Descent Celestial King, Ling Han did not plan to target the territory of this Celestial King. Otherwise, that would be really going too far, and would cause this Celestial King to return from the front lines just to suppress them. At present, they were still no match for a 3rd Heaven Celestial King. Under the restraints of the purple light, the battle prowess of Ling Han and his group fell drastically, but there was one exception. Little Terror. It could not benefit from the peculiar light or peculiar fragrance, but the restraints here had no effect on it, either, because it belonged to a completely different cultivation system. Ahead of them, a great tree appeared. This giant tree was extremely extraordinary. Though it was only 300 meters tall, the roots that protruded from the ground were like dragons, filled with power. The roots were all purple in color, with a slight translucent look to them, as if they had been carved from purple jade. Its full crown of leaves was like a multitude of spears, exuding a menacing killing intent. And in between these leaves, there were some fruits that were as red as fire. They were subduing purple fruits. After consumption, one could resist the purple light for a short while, and the effects of subduing purple fruit were really, really great in this area. Ling Han and the others approached. No matter what, they had to prepare some subduing purple fruits for themselves. Shwa, shwa, shwa. It was like the great tree had come to life. Its leafy crown swayed gently, and several hundred leaves instantly shot towards Ling Han and his group at an astonishing speed. These leaves were shaped like spears in the first place, and now that they were shot out, they grew with the wind and became 9 meters long, looking like dark iron. Ling Han took a step forwards, with both hands stretched out. He casually grabbed a streak of great Tao and turned it into a shield that stood protectively in front of himself and the 3 women. The leaves descended, and this shield formed of regulations immediately began to rapidly weaken at a visible rate, exhausting its energy at a shocking rate. Pong! The shield very quickly reached its limits and crumbled resoundingly, but Ling Han had already grabbed another streak of great Tao and continued to form a shield blocking in front of him. They had already come close. The Empress and the others charged out, and even little terror rushed over, opening its wide mouth and bit at the dragon-like roots of the great tree. Boom! Root after root darted out of the ground and moved to ensnare the Empress and the others as if they were serpents. Every root was covered with purple seals, exuding a shocking might. Battle immediately burst out. Though the Empress and the others were very strong, this great tree was even more extraordinary. It was said that only a third heaven celestial king could destroy the plant and pluck the fruits, which showed just how strong it was. Furthermore, there was purple light seeping all over this place, restraining everyone's strength and causing the great tree to become even harder to deal with. Thankfully, Little Terror's battle prowess was not affected. Its eerily white sharp teeth bit madly and chewed off a considerable amount of wood shavings, so the great tree had to use the greater part of its power to deal with Little Terror instead. Actually, Ling Han's body art was not affected by the purple light either, but the upper limit to his cultivation level had not been lifted yet, so his body art was only limited to 4,999 vitality index points, which could barely be considered to reach the Celestial King tier. In this place, there was limited room for him to perform. The present he had returned to his old habits of using regulations as his main source of battle prowess. 5 great individuals of Celestial King tier battle prowess fought against the great tree together, yet they did not gain the slightest bit of an upper hand. The great tree was really too strong, and would occasionally shoot out countless leaves, using them as arrows to inflict injury, which was difficult to defend against. Fuck, could it be that this damn tree has an endless amount of leaves? It hasn't become bald even after fighting for so long. Ling Han couldn't help but complain. Though the great tree was densely covered with leaves, shooting out several hundred of them with each attack, it should already be completely stripped bare after a few thousand times. But look, it was still lush and leafy, and did not show the slightest sign of becoming bare. After fighting for half a day, the great tree suddenly shook and dropped a few fruits, making no further move to attack. What did that mean? Not playing any longer, Ling Han and the others stopped as well. Bewitching Maiden Ro picked Little Terror up. The little guy was still biting onto one of the tree's roots, unwilling to let go. Though there are only 4 fruits, the sincerity is enough. Ling Han picked up the fruits and distributed one to each of them. The great tree had not been outmatched, but rather chose to yield. It should be because it did not want to waste time on them. Could it be that this tree had intelligence? Ling Han smiled at the great tree. Brother tree, many thanks. The great tree swayed, as if casting disdain on him. The 4 of them continued onwards. There were actually many plants here, but the majority of them had not borne fruit. Hence, Ling Han and the others had no intention of attacking them either. They continued onwards, and after traveling for half a day, a 7-story precious tower appeared ahead of them, exuding a glimmering green light. There were people in the tower, and they all drew weapons, appearing to be on guard. Are you the subordinates of the 9th Descent Celestial King? Ling Han called out. This was diplomacy before violence, to avoid from beating on the wrong people. Those guards exchanged looks and shook their heads at the same time. One of them brandished the weapon in his grip. All of you, please leave. They did not flip out, mainly because they had spotted a bewitching Maiden Ro, who was enshrouded in a peculiar ray of light. This was the symbol of a celestial king, so it was natural that no one dared to be careless. There was definitely a celestial king standing guard here, yet he had not spoken all this while, and that was naturally because he had no wish to blow up the matter. As long as Ling Han and his group were willing to leave, he would definitely take no further action. Ling Han nodded. It's great that you aren't. I'd be sorry if I conquered another of his bases. He strode over, showing no signs of anger. Halt! Halt! Those guards all yelled, but they were not too nervous. After all, Ling Han was not a celestial king, and he was alone. What need was there to take him to heart? Seeing Ling Han approach, the guards moved at the same time, brandishing their respective weapons as they attacked Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a grin, and power surged. Pong! It was only a single punch, and those guards fell all over the ground, like the flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. He took another step, and he already entered the precious tower. Xiao, a frightening aura surged out, and a celestial king flew downwards. His gaze was set on Ling Han, revealing a hint of coldness. He did not speak, but instead directly moved to strike at Ling Han. Chapter 2471, Clash of Divine Sense. Chapter 2471, Clash of Divine Sense. When a celestial king moved, how could a non-celestial king block it? Hence, this celestial king was naturally very disdainful. A mere ascending origin tier actually dared to barge in all on his own. What could this be but an act of suicide? The celestial king's focus was mostly on bewitching Maiden Ro. She was the one that could possibly become a strong opponent for him. He definitely could not allow her to enter. As long as she was restrained by the purple light, he would enjoy an absolute advantage over her. He could see the fist that Ling Han was shooting out towards him, yet it was not even worthy of increasing his notice. This was but a mere ascending origin tier. Even if he had reached the height of a pseudo-celestial king tier, so what? Given the word pseudo, there was no way his battle prowess could be considered equal to a true celestial king's. Pong! The attack landed, and a frightening clash took place. That celestial king instantly looked astounded. He was actually inferior to the other party in terms of power, and had been pushed backwards in a continuous retreat from the impact. He felt like his insides had been twisted and turned, and the discomfort was indescribable. Impossible. He looked at Ling Han in astonishment. This young man was completely motionless, his expression calm, as if punching a true celestial king back was a completely common, ordinary matter in his eyes, and it was not worthy of any excitement at all. And in this moment of his opponent's faltering, the Empress and the others had also entered the precious tower. "Who are you?" that celestial king asked, filled with surprise. How could this young man possess such astonishing battle prowess? Ling Han smiled slightly. "I am Ling Han, and this place presently belongs to our Ling alliance now. Do you submit?" That celestial king naturally would not submit, but merely Ling Han alone was enough to suppress him. What more when the other side had a celestial king as well? He hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Please offer some guidance, sir." If he was forced away with just a single exchange, he would be dissatisfied, and he would not have the face to see others in the future, either. That was too cowardly. "Come on, then." Ling Han crooked a finger. That celestial king took a deep breath and spread out both hands, extracting a black broadsword formed of great Tao. It was 9 meters long and exuded a blinding light. He looked at Ling Han and then stabbed his sword towards him. Boom! Regulations of metal surged out, and a murderous aura spread. Ling Han was completely unconcerned. He still shot out a punch. Pong! The fist landed on the black sword, and the black sword immediately crumbled, turning into pieces that danced in the air. That celestial king retreated continuously, right until he was forced to stop when he reached the wall. He looked at Ling Han in shock, waves of astonishment surging in his heart. If it was claimed that he had previously underestimated Ling Han, then he had indeed exerted his full effort this time, yet he was still no match for Ling Han. The gap in strength could not be more obvious. "Thank you for the guidance." That celestial king clasped his hands towards Ling Han. Immediately, he leaped out, leaving swiftly. Merely Ling Han alone was enough to blast him to the point that he could not even fight back. So if bewitching Maiden Ro was added into the equation, there would only be one result if he kept up the battle with no move to retreat, and that would be death. He had come to fight here firstly to become stronger, and secondly for the sake of leaving this prison. How could he be willing to die here? Ling Han chuckled. This celestial king had tact. Otherwise, Ling Han would not have minded dyeing the divine demon sword in blood again. Very quickly, he found the control post of the precious tower. He inserted his divine sense, and immediately a sliver of divine sense took human form, looking coldly upon Ling Han, his might weighing down like a mountain. A pseudo-celestial king? This figure naturally was a celestial king, and he was a third heaven celestial king at that. He was slightly surprised. The person that had conquered one of his bases was actually someone that had not even advanced into Celestial King tier yet. A mere pseudo-Celestial King. Could it be that he did not fear that he would be destroyed by his divine sense? Ling Han smiled slightly and said, I am Ling Han. Greetings, Lord Celestial King. You dare to covet my base? This Celestial King demanded loudly, very overbearing. Ling Han sighed. It looked like this Celestial King was not as amiable as Ninth Descent. He showed his fists. Lord Celestial King, since your divine sense has appeared here, doesn't that speak volumes enough? All right then, let's skip the nonsense. We should both be very busy, so just bring it on. That Celestial King couldn't help but be enraged. A mere pseudo-Celestial King actually dared to speak with him in this manner? However, how could someone who had attained the third heaven Celestial King tier lack intelligence? He frowned slightly. You are slightly extraordinary. This celestial seed is very extraordinary. That is natural. This is a perfect celestial seed that belongs to me. Ling Han nodded, without any modesty at all. That Celestial King's eyes were cold. No matter how extraordinary you are but a pseudo-Celestial King still. Moreover, even if you advanced into Celestial King tier, there would still be an unknown distance between the two of us. If I wish to suppress you, one move is all it will take. Ling Han laughed loudly. Dare I ask, what is your title, my lord? I am Dark Frost. That Celestial King declared proudly. Ling Han nodded. All right then, I will just aim for your bases subsequently. The Dark Frost Celestial King almost died of fury. Just how arrogant was this brat? He exclaimed menacingly, you no longer have any future ahead of you. He moved. Though this was just a streak of divine sense, so the strength that could be unleashed was limited. This was a third heaven Celestial King. After all, it was just a casual palm strike, and it had stimulated a terrifying power of regulation, which turned into countless spears of ice that blasted out madly in Ling Han's mind. Humph, are you allowed to take charge in my territory? Ling Han's divine sense also manifested his original form, blasting out towards the Dark Frost Celestial King. His fists shot out in a series of punches, and those ice spears were instantly blasted into smithereens. It was only now that the Dark Frost Celestial King experienced a shock. Though he was just a sliver of divine sense, and his battle prowess not even 10,000th of the battle prowess of the original, it was enough to suppress a peak stage first heaven Celestial King. Yet now his attack had been blocked by a pseudo-Celestial King. Just how inconceivable was this? Ling Han broke into a grin. How about it? My battle prowess is not bad, right? The Dark Frost Celestial King humphed. Only SOSO. If my real form was here personally, killing you would be a piece of cake. Ling Han spread out his hands. Since you say so, there is definitely no way I can allow this sliver of your divine sense to return, my lord. The Dark Frost Celestial King almost laughed in spite of himself. Though Ling Han's battle prowess was not too weak, it was completely impossible for him to be able to stop this sliver of divine sense from returning to the main body. Moreover, he had no plans to return to the main body and just simply hand over this base to Ling Han, either. Brat, your future accomplishments may be boundless, but just because of this arrogance of yours, there is no possibility that you can live that long. The Dark Frost Celestial King moved again, both hands grasping a long spear that was formed from the regulations of water as he swept it out in an attack at Ling Han. Ling Han drew up both his fists to greet this incoming attack. As long as it was not a real celestial tool, he naturally had no fear of a direct clash. Boom, boom, boom. The two fought fiercely. The Dark Frost Celestial King was much stronger. Merely a sliver of his divine sense could suppress a peak stage first heaven Celestial King, and his vitality index had probably reached over 4,600 points, not much worse than that of Ling Han himself. But the problem here was that this was just a sliver of the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense, after all, and was considered unrooted. So just how long could he battle for? Half a day later, the Dark Frost Celestial King realized that it was not good. His battle prowess was completely exhausted. Without the presence of the main body, his battle prowess could not be replenished, but Ling Han's battle prowess was still endless. This battle between the two of them was completely unjust. He did not want to die here. Though this would not have much impact on his main body, this sliver of divine sense had still obtained a lot of information, for example, about how freakish Ling Han was. He definitely had to be killed, or would ultimately become a major problem. Xiao, his figure darted out, intending to leave Ling Han's mind. Ling Han humphed. You entered my mind without my agreement, and now you want to leave. Would it really be that easy? Chapter 2472. Offending a Third Heaven Celestial King. Chapter 2472. Offending a Third Heaven Celestial King. The Dark Frost Celestial King smirked coldly. If I wish to leave, can you detain me? He broke through aggressively and was just about to burst out of Ling Han's mind, but just when he arrived at the boundary, he was suddenly bounced backwards. It was as if there was an invisible wall blocking his way. The Dark Frost Celestial King was not surprised that he would be blocked. This was Ling Han's mind, and everything here obeyed Ling Han's every single thought. But the problem was that he was a Third Heaven Celestial King, so how could Ling Han block him? Ling Han strode over. I have already said that if you behaved politely, you could naturally leave calmly, but you insisted on courting death and battled me for so long. And now you actually want to leave? His mind had been tempered through the indestructible Heaven's scroll. Upon his active command, it was like a city protected by a wall of metal and a moat of boiling water to a First Heaven Celestial King. It could not be shaken. I don't believe you, Dark Frost Celestial King yelled, and rushed forwards once more. How could Ling Han allow him to do as he liked like this? Ling Han pounced and attacked the Dark Frost Celestial King, not giving him the chance to make any move. They were both manifestations of divine sense at present and had no such thing as vital points. Instead, their entire body was their vital point. They would be slightly wounded with every attack, and with countless attacks accumulating, the Dark Frost Celestial King's exhaustion was already so serious that it was difficult for him to even maintain this form. He swayed unsteadily and could disperse at any moment. The Dark Frost Celestial King roared in fury. The value of this sliver of divine sense actually lay in bringing back intel. Losing it would have no effect on the battle prowess of the main body, but if a sliver of divine sense of a Third Heaven Celestial King was killed by a pseudo-celestial king, how could he bear with that? But circumstances prevailed over men. No matter how he shouted, it was useless. Just like Ling Han had previously said, if he had chosen to leave at the very beginning with his full battle prowess, he naturally could have succeeded. But now that he was at the end of his line, he still wanted to leave. Impossible. Ling Han moved successively. Though the Dark Frost Celestial King was resisting very stubbornly, what was the point? He had finally been killed and released a roar of defiance, but that was the only thing he could do. In the distant heart of the ruins, the Dark Frost Celestial King suddenly stiffened and was almost hit by a green vine that was thousands of meters long. Thankfully, there was another Third Heaven Celestial King beside him and moved to help him just in the nick of time, helping him to resolve this crisis. Otherwise, he would definitely be slightly injured. Friend Dark Frost, what is wrong? The other Celestial King asked. This was presently an intense battle with their enemies, and you actually became distracted at this point in time? The Dark Frost Celestial King frowned. One of my slivers of divine sense has suddenly disappeared. The other Celestial King frowned as well. There is actually someone that can prevent your divine sense from even returning. The Dark Frost Celestial King nodded. I can sense that this divine sense was left behind on the controls of a base in the outer circle. Could it be that a powerful Celestial King has circled around behind us? The other Celestial King was in slight disbelief. Though that was merely a sliver of divine sense, its battle prowess had reached the peak stage of the First Heaven and could not be destroyed by someone who was not a Second Heaven Celestial King at least. The battles here were so intense that all the Second Heaven and Third Heaven Celestial Kings were the absolute main force in battle. What force would actually have the ability to deploy first heaven or second heaven celestial kings to steal towers from behind them? The battles here are more important. No matter what, we have to conquer this precious tower first, and then I will go and handle this matter, the Dark Frost Celestial King said. The two great celestial kings raised their heads at the same time. There was an 18-story precious tower ahead of them. It was completely golden and shone with a glimmering celestial light. But there was also a massive vine entwined around the precious tower. This vine was thousands of meters long and had countless roots, which were presently battling with a great many celestial kings. Its battle prowess was extremely frightening. And in the surrounding 5,000 km, there were 11 other towers that were similar, and this kind of great battle was similarly playing out at their respective locations. After Ling Han killed the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense, he naturally would not be reserved, and used a sliver of his divine sense to lay down a mark in replacement. Instantly, he could feel the first base far off in the mountains. There was an indescribable resonance. Wong, the Black Tower trembled slightly again. If the first time was only a coincidence, the second time definitely had a reason behind it. Why had the Black Tower suddenly reacted? Could it be that there was some treasure that could help the Black Tower recover here? It was not impossible. It was said that there was a great opportunity that had appeared here. A flawless celestial seed was only one part of it, and there was also a method that could allow the local celestial kings to leave. Added with the structures here being able to help a celestial king progress rapidly, it might be that there really was something here that could help the Black Tower recover. Something at the heavenly venerable tier. Ling Han immediately felt keen. Just what could this be? The four of them settled down here, and when midnight came, they instantly saw light wash down from the top of the tower, with a peculiar fragrance wafting everywhere. The four of them hurriedly absorbed the benefits contained within. There was really some slight difference now. The two precious towers were resonating with each other, which considerably increased the density of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Roughly estimating, it was a 20% increase. No wonder all the celestial kings wanted to conquer more structures. When the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance had disappeared, Ling Han couldn't help but feel discontented. He declared, "Looks like we have to conquer more bases." The three women all nodded, similarly filled with fighting spirit. "We'll wait for Yin Xinlu and the others to deploy some people over." Because of the apparent change, there was no need to inform them. Yi and the others should know that Ling Han and his group had conquered another base, and there was a mysterious resonance between the two, so it would definitely be no problem for them to locate this base. Ling Han and his group only had to wait patiently for a few days. True enough, a mere 2 days later, Yi, Yin Xinlu, and He Xinjue had already arrived. At present, they had as many as 10 beings with Celestial King tier battle prowess. Thus, they could be generous and leave 2 Celestial Kings on guard at every base. After another day's wait, and one more time of cultivation with the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance, Ling Han and his group, along with Yi, set off together. In any case, they were already enemies with the Dark Frost Celestial King, so they just advanced in a straight path. Rather than lightly offending a few Third Heaven Celestial Kings, it would be better for them to heavily offend one of them. On their way, there were a considerable number of plants that had not been cleared yet. Some were short and stubby, no more than a foot tall, while some were hundreds of meters tall, brandishing long vines, as if they were demonic creatures. This caused Ling Han and his group some trouble, but they were all Celestial Kings, after all, so they still managed to pass through without any mishaps. Close to 3 days later, they arrived in front of a small palace wrapped in green light. The palace only had a single story and was 30 meters tall, while its width was 300 meters. The palace doors were wide open, with 2 men standing guard, and it was unknown how many people were actually inside. When they saw how there were 2 Celestial Kings in Ling Han's party, those 2 people's expressions immediately changed drastically as they called out hurriedly. Immediately, a Celestial King appeared. He blocked the entry point as he looked coldly at Ling Han and his group. "This palace already has an owner. Please take a detour." He only had to occupy the entrance and stand in their way, and he could ensure that he would be in a state of full battle prowess. They were both first heaven celestial kings, so how could it be that he would be no match for two opponents whose battle prowess had weakened by tenfold? He strode over and raised his fist. "We are here to snatch territory. Let's fight then." He rushed out and immediately unleashed his full battle prowess, his attacks harsh and powerful. However, while he was a monarch star, he had just advanced into the first heaven, after all. Furthermore, his battle prowess had been weakened further by tenfold. He could not match this celestial king in front of him, and could not break through his defenses at all. "Little terror, go." Ling Han smiled. The deadline of 3 days was close at hand. He had no wish to waste another chance of absorbing the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Chapter 2473, Consecutive Conquests. Chapter 2473, Consecutive Conquests. Little Terror pounced out. It was not affected by the purple light here, so there was no decrease to its battle prowess. Hence, it was overwhelmingly powerful. That celestial king paled in shock. He had never expected that this little beast's battle prowess would be so astonishing. He did not know that Little Terror was unaffected by the restraints of the purple light here, and instead wondered just how many times over would Little Terror's battle prowess be further boosted if they were fighting inside the structure. Little Terror unleashed its might. How could that celestial king still manage to sufficiently guard the entrance? Instantly, they aggressively burst through and brought their battle into the palace. By that point, Yi's battle prowess was fully unleashed. The powerful strength of a monarch tier surged out fiercely as he worked together with Little Terror. In a few moments, they sent that celestial king flying out of the palace, leaving him fleeing for his life in a sorry state. Ling Han once more proficiently found the control post here. Then, releasing his own spiritual power, he took the initiative to invite the enemy in. Wang, a sliver of divine sense took form and appeared within Ling Han's mind. It was the Dark Frost Celestial King. "Hey, we meet again," Ling Han greeted. This sliver of divine sense had been left behind by Dark Frost Celestial King a very long time ago, so he did not know anything that happened afterwards. Naturally, he was very confused. What did the other party mean by again? Then he was greatly enraged. A mere pseudo-celestial king actually dared to touch his territory? Nothing but a mere pseudo-celestial king. "You are truly courting death," he declared disdainfully. This reaction was completely the same as the first time. As expected of the same person having the same personality, he would react in the exact same way. Ling Han's expression was rather strange. If he swept through 10 of Dark Frost Celestial King's bases in a row, and the latter's divine sense would have this kind of reaction every single time, wouldn't it be very funny? Come battle, then. He couldn't be bothered to waste any more words. This scene had already happened once previously, so what was the point of having it acted out again? He took the initiative to charge out, stretched out his hands, and grabbed several streaks of regulations, turning them into a saber, spear, sword, and halberd, and blasting them towards Dark Frost Celestial King. A mere pseudo-celestial king actually has grasp of so many regulations. You truly are extraordinary. Dark Frost Celestial King raised a brow, appearing very surprised. Ling Han sighed. "You have said these words before as well." The Dark Frost Celestial King humphed, and similarly manipulated the regulations to battle fiercely with Ling Han. His strength was extraordinary, and Ling Han was completely incapable of suppressing him. He could only exhaust his power completely first, and only then could he kill him. But after fighting for a while, the Dark Frost Celestial King could not conceal his shock once again. The battle prowess of a pseudo-celestial king can actually reach such levels. You must have obtained some supreme inheritance. His expression was completely moved. He wanted nothing more than for his main body to immediately charge over and snatch all the secrets that belonged to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded. "This reaction is a new one. I anticipate that you would have other different reactions the next time, when I uproot your third base." "Arrogance." The Dark Frost Celestial King smirked coldly, with boundless wild waves unfurling behind him and striking out at Ling Han. Every drop of liquid had condensed the regulations of the Great Tao, and it was guaranteed that an ascending origin tier would immediately perish once hit. Ling Han was naturally unafraid. He, too, channeled the regulations of water, turning it into a colossal sword that slashed out at the mad wave. Boom! The mad wave was split apart forcefully, and Ling Han burst through aggressively, blasting the Dark Frost Celestial King. The Dark Frost Celestial King was astounded. How could it be that this brat seemed like he knew him like the back of his hand? No matter what move he used, the latter could immediately choose a tactic to deal with it. It was like he had known him for tens of billions of years, possessing a very clear, thorough understanding about him. He naturally would not know that Ling Han had already battled a very long time with his first sliver of divine sense, so he was naturally very familiar with him by now. But to him, Ling Han was completely unfamiliar, so their positions were completely unequal. The two of them fought fiercely, and the Dark Frost Celestial King gradually fell into a disadvantage. His every move was targeted by Ling Han, and no matter what he did, he could not reverse his progress into defeat. The more the Dark Frost Celestial King fought, the more stunned he was. It really seemed like Ling Han had studied him thoroughly. Whatever his reaction, Ling Han had anticipated it. He now thought back to Ling Han's previous words. Could it be that the latter really had uprooted one of his bases? No, he had to return to the main body. This brat was too freakish and had great secrets. Who knew? Maybe the value of those secrets surpassed the value of the treasure trove hidden in the heart of the ruins. When this thought arose, he immediately turned, planning to flee. He was just a sliver of divine sense and could come and go as he pleased. Ling Han laughed. He had led the other party into this trap, so how could he possibly allow the Dark Frost Celestial King to run? He had already laid down an inescapable net around his mind. If the Dark Frost Celestial King had started to escape immediately after he had entered, Ling Han really would not have completely laid out the net yet and could not have stopped him. But if the Dark Frost Celestial King still wanted to flee after such a long time of fighting, it was already an impossible feat. After about 100 exchanges, Ling Han shattered this sliver of divine sense and laid down his own spiritual mark. Instantly, the Black Tower shook slightly, as expected. Coincidentally, just as he completed this action, a peculiar light shot down from above, and fragrance wafted through the air. In the heart of the ruins, the Dark Frost Celestial King stiffened again and was almost sent flying by a vine. "Brother Dark Frost, what's wrong with you again?" The third heaven Celestial King beside him frowned. Was this ally really all that dependable? "Another of my bases have been occupied," the Dark Frost Celestial King replied, his expression dark. The Celestial King beside him was surprised. Could it be that someone was purposely targeting him? To actually uproot two of the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases in a row. Was this a provocation? "After taking this precious tower down, I will definitely charge back," the Dark Frost Celestial King declared coldly and humphed. He vented the fury he felt on that extremely powerful vine in front of him. Boom! An icy chill spread out. His battle prowess was incredibly terrifying. Ling Han and the others absorbed the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. With the resonance of 3 structures, the boost of the benefits was around 60%. Even if there were only 30 minutes, using time acceleration effects, their progress was still extremely shocking. Of course, he was not included. He did not have a physique of time. Cultivating now really had very great benefits to forming a celestial seed. Ling Han had a feeling that if he cultivated a few more 100 times like this, there would be completely no need for him to contend for that perfect celestial seed. His own celestial seed was definitely capable of becoming flawless and perfect. There may be treasures hidden here that would allow the Black Tower to recover. If I only possessed the strength that I have now, it is completely inadequate in a battle against a third heaven Celestial King. I have to become a Celestial King. Just give me some more time. Ling Han did not want to waste time. After he had completed cultivation, He left Yi behind to guard this tower while he brought the 3 women with him, and they continued onwards, trying to conquer a new base once every 3 days. Of course, these bases would definitely all be the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases. If the Dark Frost Celestial King knew this, he would definitely fly into a rage. Just how much effort had he exerted when he had conquered these bases? Not only did he have to contend with others, clearing the plants that had nested here caused him to expend great effort. It could be said that everything had been obtained at the expense of blood. Ling Han and his group soon found the next structure. There was no need for questions. The Celestial King that had guarded that other palace was here presently. 2 great Celestial Kings blocked the entrance, wanting to stop Ling Han and the others. This naturally was pointless effort. Very quickly, Ling Han and his group broke through their defenses. It was the same routine when he erased the Dark Frost Celestial King's divine sense. This Celestial King was initially very arrogant, but as they fought, he would discover that the situation was turning worse and wanted to flee. In the end, it was naturally impossible that he could succeed, and he would be forcefully destroyed by Ling Han. This time, Ling Han and his group slowed their progress, waiting for Yin Xinlu and the others to rush over from the front. They waited 11 days. When Yin Xinlu and the others arrived, Ling Han shockingly discovered that their party had actually strengthened many times over. Chapter 2474, The Team Strengthens. Chapter 2474, The Team Strengthens. This party not only contained Yin Xinlu and Fu Zhou, there was also the Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, and Jialan. Ling Han swept a glance over them and discovered that the Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming were both still pseudo-celestial kings, but Shi Chanzi and Jialan had already advanced into the Celestial King tier. With their aptitude as monarch stars, the Celestial King tier they attained was naturally extremely powerful. Ling Han stepped out to greet the newly arrived party and invited everyone into the palace. After some conversation, he found out that the Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, and the others had all met one another at the borders of the ruins. They had heard of the events in the ruins, and thus planned to work together and conquer a few bases for fun. In the end, the first base they encountered was the one that was guarded by Yin Xinlu and the others. After they had talked to one another, there naturally was no way that they would be fighting each other. Haha, we now have a strong party, so let's quickly go and occupy the next territory. Ling Han laughed. Everyone nodded proudly. Even though there were still a few pseudo-celestial kings here, they all had the aptitude of monarch stars, and it was definite that they would become 9th heaven celestial kings in the future. How could they possibly take mere 3rd heaven celestial kings to heart? Even if they were outmatched at present, it would not take too much time before they would be able to catch up to them. There was no need for them to be afraid of these so-called overlords. Before setting out, Ling Han gained an understanding of everyone's battle prowess. Both the Rain Emperor and Ji Wuming, without prior agreement, also planned to harvest the essence of thousands of celestial seeds to form the path of their own unique celestial seed like him. Though they had not truly formed a celestial seed, their vitality index had broken through the great threshold of 5,000 points. One had reached as high as 5,400, while the other was even stronger, at 5,500. Apart from that, with the guidance of Ji Wuming, both Shi Chanzi and Jialan had these plans as well, but their limits could be seen from this. They had very soon reached the end of their respective paths. Though they had indeed harvested the essence of several celestial seeds, the number was not very great, and there was no way that they could compare with Ji Wuming, Ling Han, and the rest. But even so, their battle prowess after breaking through to the Celestial King tier was still extremely terrifying, and their vitality index had reached 6,200 points. This was the battle prowess of a 2nd heaven Celestial King. The two of them naturally were the strongest in the group. Next was Ling Han, the Empress, Ji Wuming, and the rest. Their vitality index was around 5,500 to 5,600. There was no apparent weakness. Calm. Leaving Fu Zhou behind to guard here, they set off boldly, continuing their sweeping conquest. With their present ranks, wasn't it just a piece of cake to conquer any base? The 2nd heaven and 3rd heaven celestial kings were all fighting fiercely in the heart of the ruins. Those guarding here were all only First Heaven Celestial Kings, so how could they stop Ling Han and his group? Very quickly, they had conquered their fifth base. Far away in the heart of the ruins, the Dark Frost Celestial King, the other Third Heaven Celestial King, Ling Han and the others made some adjustments here. If they were in contact with the purple light for too long, their bodies would also be greatly affected, causing them to become weary, and even their cultivation level could regress. Unexpectedly, just when they were resting here, their party grew further. Huafurong appeared out of the blue. Like Ling Han and Ji Wuming, though she was still a pseudo-celestial king, her vitality index had soared to above 5,500. The exact number was not clear, but in any case, she should be very, very strong. Ling Han nodded internally. It looked like the heavenly venerates had all broken through like this, and that was why they had their own descendants walk the same path. Though Ji Wuming did not have a heavenly venerable tier background, he had been the strongest celestial king for so many years, so he naturally had his own understanding. Thankfully, Dongfang Rui and Xian Rong had not followed Huafurong, or Ling Han would definitely not allow the two of them to join his team. Huafurong still looked like a little girl, but the aura she exuded was incredibly frightening. Even Ji Wuming dared not go too close to her. And she was still a pseudo-celestial king at this. If she were really to advance into the celestial king tier, just how strong would she be by then? After slightly resting, they set out once more and easily conquered their sixth base. However, their good luck ended here. Very quickly, Ling Han discovered that he had lost connection with the first base. That sliver of divine sense of his very quickly returned, allowing him to know that a force had sent out 3 celestial kings who defeated He Xinjue and erased his divine sense. That force had even mobilized a second heaven celestial king, and that was why even the divine sense that Ling Han had left behind was no match for the opponent. However, it had still flown back to him, and also brought the intel back. Otherwise, he would have to wait until He Xinjue came and explained clearly face to face. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. They were attacking the rear of another force, but it was inevitable that their rear would also be attacked by others. There was nothing they could do about that. Calm. We can't just take this loss. We have to fight back, everyone shouted. Just think, which of them was the type to take losses lying down? They were all either Monarch Stars or Monarch Tiers, and there were even Supreme Monarch Stars among them. It was usually only they that would be bullying others. We go back and fight. Ling Han nodded as well. This time, the other party definitely had to be taught pain, so that they would know that their territory could not be touched. They had to establish their might with a single battle. They left one person behind to stay guard here, while the others all charged back. Of course, they did not waste the benefits that would occur once every 3 days either. When it was almost time, they would stay around half a day in their own bases, firstly for cultivation, and secondly also to rest their bodies. After all, the purple light was quite hateful. Over a dozen days later, they arrived at the first base that belonged to them in the first place. Here, there was a second heaven celestial king on guard. He did not hide his power at all. From afar, 2 streaks of peculiar light could already be seen from the tower. This was a warning that could be no more obvious. First heaven celestial kings had best not come to court death. Under the restraints of the purple light, a first heaven celestial king couldn't even withstand a single blow from a second heaven celestial king. It was possible for it to even be an insta-kill. They might not even be able to escape. Jialan and Shi Chanzi moved in unison. Only the 2 of them here had battle prowess that reached the second heaven, so it was naturally them taking charge of the offensive. They each consumed a subduing purple fruit, and they could immediately ignore the restraints of the purple light and charge into the tower. Through an intense battle, the second heaven celestial king on guard was also chased off. This base returned once more into the possession of Ling Han and his group. Ling Han branded his own divine sense, and also announced that this place truly now returned under their ownership. Which force did that second heaven celestial king belong to? The peaceful underworld celestial king. In the past, he had already sent troops to conquer this place, yet had encountered the interference of Ling Han and his group. However, he was not willing to just give up so easily. Thus, he had sent a second heaven celestial king here. He had thought that the matter was assured, but had not expected that the strength of Ling Han and his group had also soared considerably. His subordinates hadn't even settled down properly when they were once more chased off. Should we switch targets to another celestial king? Everyone thought that they should not let the peaceful underworld celestial king off so easily. No matter what, they should at least conquer 7 or 8 of his bases as revenge. They were all uncontrollable people too. With one person taking the lead, the others did not object either. Thus, they switched paths and began to conquer the bases of the peaceful underworld celestial king. With how strong they were, they conquered 4 bases successively in over a dozen days, causing the peaceful underworld celestial king, who was still far away, to almost explode in fury. But the battles at the front lines were too grim. Even sending out a second heaven celestial king would cause tremendous pressure on him, so how could he possibly charge back personally? He had no choice but to suffer this loss silently. By now, Ling Han and his group had occupied 10 bases. The latter were all structures in the outer circle, and they had also discovered that the increase in number could no longer boost the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. Looks like 9 bases is the limit. Next, we can only obtain the structures in the heart of the ruins, and only then could the benefits continue to increase. Chapter 2475, Forced into Retreating. Chapter 2475, Forced into Retreating. Ling Han and his group had reached an agreement. They had no intention of occupying more bases, but rather would set out towards deeper areas. We should still just focus on the Dark Frost Celestial King. Conquering 5 of the peaceful underworld Celestial King's bases in a row was merely a warning to this Celestial King that they were not to be trifled with. Since this goal had already been achieved, they naturally had to return and continue targeting the Dark Frost Celestial King. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han had times when he would be petty and hold a grudge. They switched their targets and continued onwards. After their conquering a few more of the Dark Frost Celestial King's bases, this Celestial King finally could bear it no longer. 9 bases was just the right number to maximize the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance. It was useless even if they had more than that. So though the loss of a few bases displeased the Dark Frost Celestial King, it was still within a controllable range. But after losing another few bases, the number of bases under the Dark Frost Celestial King's control became less than 9. How could this be allowed? He sent out 2 second heaven Celestial Kings to return and guard the bases, engaging in a fierce battle with Ling Han and his group. The battle this time was especially intense. Both sides were truly angered by the battle, but ultimately, it still ended with Ling Han and his group retreating. It could not be helped. Though Ling Han and his party also had 2 Celestial Kings with Second Heaven Celestial King tier battle prowess, their vitality index was only around 6,200, after all. Among Second Heaven Celestial Kings, this number could not be ranked in the upper tiers, and the 2 Celestial Kings under Dark Frost Celestial King's command were both middle stage, or even late-stage Second Heaven Celestial Kings. Added with the fact that they had the aptitude of Emperor tiers at the very least, their battle prowess far surpassed Ling Han's groups. Ling Han and his group returned back to the last base, preserving their strength and improving their abilities while getting ready for a second attempt. If they wanted to continue onwards, firstly, Shichanzi and Jialan would have to walk further on the level of the first heaven. If they could reach the peak stage of the first heaven, their battle prowess would probably reach the peak stage of the second heaven. This naturally was enough to emerge superior over all other second heaven celestial kings. Secondly, Ling Han, Hua Furong, and the other elites could advance into the celestial king tier. Then, their battle prowess would definitely soar directly into the late or even peak stage of the second heaven. They thus stayed patient and earnestly cultivated in their bases. They were all working hard on increasing their strength. Ling Han, Ji Wuming, Hua Furong, and the others all set their differences apart and conversed without any personal reservations. They thought that the celestial seed they respectively nurtured was indeed close to perfection. Even if they did not obtain that perfect celestial seed, they could still advance into the Celestial King tier in their strongest state. After all, this so-called strongest was only nurtured by heaven and earth. In nature, it was indeed the strongest, but to the individual, only one that was completely suited to them uniquely was truly the strongest. After confirming several times, they decided to cultivate here, right until their celestial seed was perfect and flawless, and then they would break through into the Celestial King tier. Perhaps this light and this peculiar fragrance is the perfect celestial seed. They all held this guess. They settled their hearts and stayed patient. Very quickly, 300 years had passed, and only a 1,000 years was left until the deadline of 10,000 years. The battles on the front lines had also become more intense. The Celestial Kings were all pouring blood. They could witness showers of blood rain from the skies, ghostly wails, and howling practically every day. Yet Ling Han and his group paid absolutely no attention to anything that happened outside. They were all earnest and working hard on cultivation. They would break through before the deadline of 10,000 years and participate in that final great battle. But right at this time, their peace was broken. "Get out here!" someone shouted from outside, the tone extremely arrogant and also very disdainful. Ling Han and his group just happened to complete a single round of absorbing the benefits of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance, and thought, "Who is it now that has suddenly charged onto our doorstep? Why does it sound a little familiar?" They arrived at the entrance of the palace. With their pride, they would not lower themselves to blocking the entrance and battle there. 7 people had charged here in a single party, and they were led by 2 second heaven celestial kings. They were enshrouded in 2 streaks of celestial light, which was incredibly dazzling. Additionally, there were also 4 other first heaven celestial kings whose aura was also very strong. They should be at the peak stage of the first heaven, and only one of them had not advanced into the Celestial King tier, and was only a pseudo-celestial king. But it was this pseudo-celestial king that surprised Ling Han and his group. Dongfeng Rue. He was actually cooperating with the Dark Frost Celestial King. "Ling Han, today will be the day of your death," Dongfeng Rue declared, his expression filled with mockery. Ling Han scoffed, "Have you taken so many pills that even your brain is not working right anymore?" Dongfeng Rue knew that Ling Han had a mean tongue and naturally would not be angered. He had that level of self-control. He swept an eye over Hua Furong and the others. "Everyone, on the basis that we are all from the celestial realm, please do not interfere so we would not hurt the peace between us." His words were mainly directed towards Hua Furong. She was acclaimed as the #1 celestial, and similarly had a heavenly venerable tier background. Yet Hua Furong was very disdainful. "Dongfeng Rue, you really are getting more childish with age. To actually find helpers for a battle of equals, you truly are bringing embarrassment to Lord Sealed Emotion." Dongfeng Rue did not consider it as an embarrassment, but rather laughed loudly. "I have reached an agreement with Lord Dark Frost. Lord Dark Frost will help me obtain that perfect celestial seed, and in return, after leaving the celestial path, Lord Dark Frost will also obtain guidance from my father. Becoming a 9th heaven celestial king would be no problem." Hua Furong couldn't be bothered to waste words on him. With a flutter of her sleeve, she paid no further heed to him. "Ling Han, you will definitely die here today," Dongfeng Rue declared menacingly. Ling Han had already become one of his internal demons. He definitely had to be gotten rid of. Shi Chanzi looked towards Ji Wuming. Only he and Jialan were capable of opposing second heaven celestial kings out of all of them here. If they made no move, Ling Han could only flee. Ji Wuming nodded. "If you can kill him, go ahead. No need for mercy." At this instant, he had turned once more into the Buddha of slaughter that mercilessly lifted the blade. Dongfeng Rue turned and said to the 2 second heaven celestial kings beside him, "Please move, my lords." These 2 people did not dare put on airs either. After all, he was the only son of a heavenly venerate. Previously, they did not know of the existence of Heavenly Venerable Tier, but it was enough for them to know that Heavenly Venerable Tier was even more awesome than 9th Heaven Celestial King Tier. "We will definitely not disappoint young Master Rue," the two celestial kings said, giving Dongfang Rue enough face. They strode out, approaching the palace. Shi Chanzi stepped out, standing in front of Ling Han, and Jialan, after some hesitation, also chose to stand beside Shi Chanzi. The two great celestial kings in front of them were naturally prepared. They did not feel it was strange for Shi Chanzi and Jialan to appear. They moved without any reservations. Boom! Great Tao turned into weapons and exuded a boundless celestial brilliance in their hands as they blasted towards Shi Chanzi and Jialan. Shi Chanzi and Jialan also went all out, battling fiercely with the two great celestial kings. However, these two great celestial kings were clearly stronger and had also ingested the subduing purple fruit. Very quickly, they had gotten the upper hand and were beating down on Shi Chanzi and Jialan. Though their victory was not instantaneous, they definitely would not take too long. Only half a day later, Shi Chanzi and Jialan had lost completely. The two great celestial kings arrived, forcing Ling Han and his group to have no choice but to retreat. They took separate paths, and after they had managed to throw those two second heaven celestial kings off their tails, they finally reunited at a base in front. Their peace did not last long. They had only stayed here 5 days when Dongfang Rue and the two second heaven celestial kings had charged here again. They were outmatched, and so could only flee once more. Within a bit more than a short dozen days, they were forced to run here and there, losing one base after another, causing their anger to build and build up. I am about to break through, Ling Han said. Chapter 2476, Ling Han's Breakthrough. Chapter 2476, Ling Han's Breakthrough. The celestial seed mark inside Ling Han's body had already been nearing perfection. In fact, it might have already become perfect, but there had simply been no urgent need for him to advance, so he had kept holding it off until now. Yet, he was being relentlessly hunted by Dongfang Rue and the two celestial kings, and this enraged him immensely. At the same time, it also stoked a strong desire for him to break through. He wanted to become a celestial king, and then he wanted to pummel those bastards. His celestial seed was most likely already perfect, flawless. There was no need to nurture it any further. However, breaking through to become a first heaven celestial king was a matter of grave importance, one from which there was no turning back. It was because of this that he was being so utterly careful, and it was because of this that he had delayed breaking through for so long. However, with Ling Han's personality, once he made up his mind, he would never hesitate again. He immediately started to break through. He loosened his cultivation, and his aura instantly rose explosively. Dark clouds gathered overhead, with arcs of lightning cracking amid them. Heavenly tribulation was forming. This was a celestial king tribulation. However, because Ling Han was so powerful, it didn't appear like an ordinary celestial king tribulation at all. Instead, it looked like the tribulation of a second heaven celestial king. Crack! A bolt of lightning slammed down, transforming into a giant that had a razor-sharp sword in its hand. It viciously slashed down at Ling Han. With a roar, Ling Han fearlessly charged forth. At the same time, he also had to solidify the celestial seed mark in his mind, transforming it into a real and tangible seed. He then had to borrow the power of heavenly tribulation to nurture it. As for how much it could grow, this would be up to his talent and luck. In fact, it was during this stage that celestial kings would enjoy the fastest growth and development. Afterward, their advance would slow down significantly. Ling Han unleashed his celestial physique of time. These few hours were far too important to him, so he couldn't afford to waste a single second. Not only that, but he even needed to do everything he could to extend this time. Boom! He was immediately struck by heavenly tribulation, which caused his entire body to disappear. Meanwhile, a huge crater appeared in the ground, measuring a whopping 300 meters deep. However, in the next instant, Ling Han immediately dashed out from the crater, soaring into the sky. He was fighting a heaven-defying battle. In fact, facing heavenly tribulation here put Ling Han at a huge disadvantage. This was because he was being suppressed by the purple light, causing his battle prowess to drop significantly. He was completely no match for heavenly tribulation. However, even though he knew this, he still chose to advance here. There was naturally a good reason for this. The more difficult the circumstances, the greater the benefits if he succeeded in overcoming the odds. Moreover, Ling Han also wanted to know whether the purple light would be targeted by heavenly tribulation for interfering. After all, it was rumored that this purple light was emitted by the vegetation of this place. If heavenly tribulation targeted them, then even these plants would have to face a tribulation. In the center of these ruins, there were also a large number of celestial kings battling with these plants. Thus, would they be dragged into the mess as well? That would surely be a lively scene. However, it was a shame that heavenly tribulation wasn't enraged by the interfering purple light. This disappointed Ling Han greatly. Ling Han continued to resist heavenly tribulation with his full strength. Otherwise, this second heaven celestial king tier tribulation could potentially kill him. It was true that he liked to take risks, but he definitely had no desire to commit suicide. Meanwhile, he continued to rapidly solidify the celestial seed mark in his mind. Rumble. Heavenly tribulation unleashed its divine might, and it was as if it didn't want to allow a freak such as Ling Han to advance. Arcs of lightning crashed down, carrying with them the furious great Tao of lightning as they smashed into Ling Han. Ling Han was neither furious nor alarmed. Instead, he continued to focus on what was important. Under the furious barrage of lightning attacks, Ling Han was like a blade of grass swaying about in the storm. His body was covered in burns, and he looked much like a seared piece of wood. His vitality was as weak as could be, and it was as if he were about to die at any moment. His celestial seed mark was composed of countless threads, appearing as complex as possible. At this moment, only a single thread remained incomplete. As long as he completed this thread, it would no longer be a celestial seed mark. Instead, it would become a true celestial seed. Boom, boom, boom. Heavenly tribulation became increasingly violent. Once Ling Han advanced, his newfound strength would definitely shatter some kind of equilibrium. Thus, heaven and earth had to suppress him no matter what. Countless lightning giants surrounded Ling Han, furiously attacking him with their lightning-formed weapons. They wanted to kill him. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, forcefully raising his defenses. He then abandoned all resistance, focusing his full attention on the final thread. Even though this was the final step, if he failed to complete it, his battle prowess as a celestial king would end up at least 10 times weaker. It was because of the critical importance of this step that Ling Han focused all of his attention on completing the final thread of the celestial seed mark. This was the most critical moment. Using his divine sense as a guide, he summoned a supremely radiant thread in the air, using it to connect 2 nodes and completing the shell of his celestial seed. Boom! His aura rose explosively, and it was as if he possessed the power to easily crush all celestial bodies. In the distance, Ji Wuming, the Empress, and the others all watched on. "He's indeed extraordinary," Shi Chanzi said in astonishment. "He's only just become a celestial king, yet the might of heavenly tribulation is already comparable to that of second heaven celestial kings. If I hadn't witnessed it with my own eyes, I definitely couldn't have imagined it." Ji Wuming remained silent, yet his eyes burned with fighting spirit. Hua Furong shook her head and said, "This brat still hasn't displayed his true abilities yet. I have a feeling that his greatest strength is his body art, not his power of regulations." Everyone was stunned upon hearing this. One had to realize that Ling Han had faced the tribulation of a second heaven celestial king upon advancing to the celestial king tier. This was a clear sign of his terrifying power. Yet, she was claiming that this wasn't Ling Han's greatest strength? How could they believe this? However, it was Hua Furong who had uttered these words, so who dared to doubt her? The Empress, Hu Niu, and bewitching Maiden Ro all wore proud expressions. Ling Han was someone who could manipulate fundamental powers that only heavenly venerates could interact with. This was a power that far exceeded the level of regulations. Thus, It was only natural that he was as freakish as could be. Boom, boom, boom. Heavenly tribulation became increasingly violent, intent on killing Ling Han. Pong! The lightning giants attacked in unison, and Ling Han wasn't able to block them even though he had channeled the indestructible heaven scroll. It wasn't long before his energy was exhausted, causing the golden sheen on his body to dim. Whoosh! The lightning giants attacked again, sending thousands of lightning blades at Ling Han. Not good. Everyone's expression changed drastically. This was the most critical moment for Ling Han. If he chose to block this attack, all of his previous efforts to solidify the celestial seed would have been in vain. However, if he continued to ignore heavenly tribulation, he might be ruthlessly struck to death. This was an incredibly difficult situation. However, a smile spread across Ling Han's face. He activated the great Tao of time, sending his divine sense into another realm that surpassed time itself. It was as if everything had become frozen in time. In fact, even the furious attacks of the lightning giants became as slow as a snail's crawl. The reactions of Ling Han's physical body naturally became extremely slow as well. However, his divine sense was transcendent above this. Most importantly, he only needed his divine sense to solidify the celestial seed. A brilliant ray of light formed in his divine sense, connecting the final two nodes. At this moment, his celestial seed was finally completed. Wang! A powerful aura burst out from Ling Han's body. He had already been extremely powerful to begin with, yet he now ascended to a new height. He was a celestial king. At this moment, Ling Han had genuinely broken through to the celestial king. His mind relaxed, and he immediately exited this transcendent state. Boom, 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 boom. The attacks of the lightning giants instantly accelerated, mercilessly slamming toward him. Come! Ling Han was fearless as he clenched his fists and charged forward. Chapter 2477, Boundlessly Powerful. Chapter 2477, Boundlessly Powerful. Pong, pong, pong. Ling Han forcefully lashed out, instantly throwing more than 1,000 punches. With his powerful body arts, he could indeed punch at such a rapid speed. One after another, the lightning giants were obliterated. Not a single one of them could withstand more than one strike from Ling Han. Shi Chanzi and Jialan were transfixed with shock. Even though they could also defeat Second Heaven Celestial Kings, they definitely couldn't do so with just a few casual punches. However, Ling Han had obliterated thousands of such beings in an instant. Just what did this signify? Even the pupils of Ji Wuming and the Rain Emperor contracted. They were also stunned by Ling Han's overwhelming battle prowess. Only Hua Furong remained calm and unflustered. She was confident that she would be no weaker than this when she advanced to the Celestial King tier. First of all, Ling Han was indeed powerful. After becoming a Celestial King, his vitality index immediately shot up, exceeding 6,600. Second of all, however, the lightning giants weren't genuine living beings, and they were only a form of energy. Thus, they would immediately shatter in the face of overwhelming power. Even so, this didn't diminish Ling Han's might. His ability to obliterate thousands of lightning giants in an instant was a reflection of his unfathomable power. However, heavenly tribulation didn't give up. Rumble. Many more lightning giants materialized. However, it was impossible for their battle prowess to rise. Thus, all of them were still at the early stage of the second heaven. That being the case, how could they possibly threaten Ling Han? He casually lashed out, using punches and kicks to shatter the lightning giants. He was treating heavenly tribulation like his plaything. He was clearly only a first heaven celestial king, and he had clearly only just advanced. Once he advanced to the peak stage of the first heaven, would he be powerful enough to rival those at the early stage of the third heaven? Ling Han continued to nurture and grow his celestial seed. This was the period of time when it would grow the fastest. Once heavenly tribulation ended, this chance would also be gone. He fought against heavenly tribulation, transforming the lightning into nutrients to feed the growth of his celestial seed. This was the power of heaven and earth, so it was naturally beneficial to his celestial seed. The celestial seed sprouted at a rate that was visible to the naked eye. First, it was 2 leaves that grew. Then, it was the roots that extended, embedding themselves into Ling Han's divine sense as they continued to grow. Half a day passed, and heavenly tribulation finally dissipated. At this moment, Ling Han's celestial seed had already grown into a sapling. It was 15 centimeters tall, and it had a dozen or so lush green leaves. However, it radiated with an indescribably paramount aura. Ling Han shut his eyes, sensing the powerful energy within him. Judging from the appearance of his celestial seed, he was most likely still at the early stage of the first heaven. If there were 10 levels to the early stage, then he had already reached the 7th. He was closing in on the middle stage. This was simply astonishing. For most people, it would take at least several million years to advance through the early stage. However, if Ling Han took advantage of the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance of this place, he could potentially breeze through the early stage in just a few years. This comparison was as stark as could be. More importantly, what did this signify? Once he raised the limit of his cultivation, his body art would experience explosive growth. At the same time, his divine demon sword could also become a genuine celestial tool. Combined together, just what kind of lofty heights would his battle prowess reach? Ling Han excitedly retrieved his dimension scroll, yearning to extract its power to feed his body art. "Heh, so this is where you are," a familiar voice said with a cold chuckle. They looked over, only to see that Dongfang Rue and the 2 celestial kings had caught up to them again. They had naturally noticed the commotion caused by Ling Han's tribulation, and it was because of this that they had caught up so quickly. However, they had still arrived a little too late. Ling Han had already completed his tribulation. "You've broken through," Dongfang Rue exclaimed as he looked at Ling Han. There was a ribbon of peculiar light around Ling Han, and this was a clear sign that he was a celestial king. Dongfang Rue frowned upon seeing this. Trying to kill a fellow celestial king was far too difficult. Unless he was a 3rd heaven celestial king, it would be almost impossible to suppress Ling Han. However, considering the immense suppression of this place, and taking into account the fact that Ling Han had only just advanced, rendering him unfamiliar with his newfound power, it was perhaps not an impossible task to kill him. Ling Han wore a beaming smile as he said, "It's time for payback." He then looked at the 2 second heaven celestial kings and said, "If you 2 don't want to die, hurry up and piss off." The 2 celestial kings observed Ling Han's aura. He was clearly a 1st heaven celestial king, yet he made them feel a strong sense of apprehension. However, after hearing Ling Han's words, they were naturally very displeased. Regardless of how powerful he was still only a 1st heaven celestial king. Thus, where was his arrogance and confidence coming from? "I don't believe it. How can a measly 1st heaven?" Pong! Just as one of them opened their mouth to voice their displeasure, a streak of light flashed past their eyes, bringing with it a solid fist. This fist was incredibly fast. Just as he was about to raise his hands to block it, he suddenly discovered that he couldn't move even a single finger. The space around him had been completely restricted. He then felt a heavy weight strike his body, sending him flying into the distance. The other 2nd heaven celestial king was also just about to condemn Ling Han's naivety and arrogance. However, he immediately bit his tongue upon seeing this. "Fuck, is this truly a newly advanced celestial king?" With a single punch, he had sent the 2nd heaven celestial king flying into the distance. This sent a chill through his body, and it also caused cold sweat to form on his forehead. Dongfang Rue was also astounded. He knew that Ling Han was a monarch star, so it was only natural that he would become mightily powerful after advancing to the celestial king. However, he hadn't imagined that he would become so boundlessly powerful. He had defeated a 2nd heaven celestial king with a single punch. Ling Han cracked a grin as he turned to the remaining celestial king, saying, "What did you want to say? Come on, spit it out. I guarantee I won't stop you. I'll let you finish before I pummel you to death." This was a blatant threat. However, this was an extremely effective threat. The Celestial King wiped the cold sweat from his brow, and he felt an urge to say something to get back at Ling Han. However, the scene of Ling Han's punch continued to replay in his mind, causing more sweat to pour down his body. Even though that punch had been incredibly quick, catching his companion off guard, his companion had still had some time to react. However, it was as if his body had been completely restricted, preventing him from moving even a single finger. The regulation of space. It was difficult for Celestial Kings to kill fellow Celestial Kings because once the weaker party felt threatened, they could immediately turn around and flee. It would be extremely difficult for their opponent to catch up to them. However, if the two parties were engaged in close-quarters combat, and one party had mastered the regulations of space, the situation would be completely different. Trying to flee while under the restriction of the regulations of space would be incredibly difficult. This restriction was equivalent to severing his path of retreat. Even if he fought with his full power, it was still very likely that he would be killed. The Celestial King naturally didn't dare to make a squeak. He had never pledged his life to anyone, and he was more so a domineering force on this celestial path. As such, how could he sacrifice himself for someone else? Ling Han retracted his gaze from the Celestial King. He then turned to look at Dongfang Rui. He didn't speak. Yet Dongfang Rui's body started to involuntarily tremble. An indescribable chill washed over him. Even though he had dominated an entire generation before, enjoying the title of strongest under Celestial Kings, and even though his father was a heavenly venerate, what did this matter? At this moment, could the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable charge here to save him? However, he was a resolute person, and he immediately removed the restriction on his cultivation as he retrieved his celestial tool. He started to break through to the Celestial King tier. If he didn't become a Celestial King, he would definitely be killed by Ling Han. At the same time, he could no longer rely on the two Celestial Kings. One had been severely wounded, and one didn't dare to move. A smile tugged at the corners of Ling Han's lips. With a flick of his right hand, the divine demon sword materialized in his palm. Xiao. With a toss, he threw the divine demon sword forward, imbuing it with the regulations of time, regulations of space, and a myriad of other regulations. With a flash, the sword had already arrived before Dongfang Rui. Pooh! It directly stabbed into his skull. Chapter 2478, Celestial King 2480. Subduing a Celestial King. Chapter 2478. Celestial King 2480. Subduing a Celestial King. Pooh! The divine demon's sword carved a brilliant arc through the air before ruthlessly piercing Dongfang Rui's skull. Dongfang Rui's eyes widened in shock. If he raised his eyes slightly, he could see the swaying sword that was embedded in his head. Ling Han had controlled his power extremely well, with the sword only just piercing Dongfang Rui's divine sense. In fact, the tip of the sword didn't even come out the other side of his head. Thus, the sword swayed up and down, and it looked as if it might fall out at any moment. Dongfang Rui reached up to grab the divine demon sword, yet the energy in his body was draining at an alarming rate. At this moment, he was even weaker than a 3-year-old infant. "I know what you want to say," Ling Han said as he walked over. He wore an apathetic expression as he continued, "I'm sure you want to threaten me by bringing out your father again. So, let me save you some energy. I'm not afraid of your father, and there will come a day when I drag him off his throne and beat him until he becomes a dead dog. Remember this. When your father enters the afterlife, ask him if he died like this." Dongfang Rui wanted to speak. Yet when he opened his mouth, he couldn't speak a word at all. He wanted to use his divine sense, yet his mind had already been pierced, so how could he do so? He could only emit a gagging sound as the vitality rapidly drained from his body. He couldn't accept this. As a monarch star, as the son of a heavenly venerate, as someone who had been sealed for several epochs so he could compete for the flawless Celestial King, as someone who could become a heavenly venerate in the future. Now, however, he had been ruthlessly killed before he could even become a Celestial King. If he had known that this would happen, he would have definitely chosen to become a ninth heaven celestial king first. After all, he would still have a sliver of a chance to become a heavenly venerate. It was just that this chance would be much smaller than if he obtained the flawless celestial seed. Now, however, everything was futile. "I'll be waiting for you," Dongfang Rui said, drawing on the last ounce of his power. This was the culmination of his resentment and despair. He refused to die before he uttered these words. This wasn't a grand agreement or whatnot, but was instead the greatest desire in his mind. He wished for Ling Han to die quickly. He wished for Ling Han to enter the afterlife with him. Ling Han smiled and said, "It's more realistic to wait for your father. Farewell." He pulled back the divine demon sword. Pooh! A jet of blood sprayed into the air, after which Dongfang Rui fell limply to the floor. He was undoubtedly dead. However, his eyes were still wide open, showing his anger and despair. Beside him, even Ji Wuming and Hua Furong had their mouths slightly open in astonishment. It was as if they could barely comprehend this. That was the son of a heavenly venerate. Not long ago, the Juwu Heavenly Venerate and the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable had only agreed to stop hunting Ling Han because of Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's threat. If they dared to touch a single hair of Ling Han's, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu would kill all of their descendants. Both Heavenly Venerates had children, so they were naturally afraid of this threat. Now, however, Ling Han had killed Dongfang Rui. What could hold the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable back now? However, after some careful thought, since Dongfang Rui could hunt Ling Han, why couldn't Ling Han kill him in return? Oh, so Dongfang Rui was immune to Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's rage. Ling Han wore a radiant smile. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu would naturally hold the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable back for him. In fact, even Zhou Hong would help him. This had been a battle between youths of the same generation, so life and death was their own responsibility. How could seniors interfere? The two second heaven celestial kings both trembled in terror. They were filled with petrification. Ling Han had killed the son of a heavenly venerate without so much as blinking his eyes. What were they worth? They exchanged a glance and exclaimed, "Run?" While Ling Han's attention was elsewhere, they immediately made an attempt to flee. "Since you've already come, why don't you stay for a while longer?" Ling Han raised his hand, making a pressing motion at the two celestial kings. The regulations of time rumbled forth, detrimentally affecting their speed. The two celestial kings fled with all their might, yet they quickly discovered that they were moving as slow as a snail. In fact, even the falling leaves were moving faster than them. They were absolutely horrified. This was the regulation of time. Was this youth the reincarnation of a ninth heaven celestial king? He had only just advanced to the celestial king tier, so how did he possess such mastery over the regulations? Where had he found so much time to cultivate? "We need to go all out," the two celestial kings roared. Boundless power of regulations surged from their bodies, instantly shattering the restriction of time. After all, at the celestial king tier, all regulations were equal. However, even though they shouted this, one of the celestial kings seized the opportunity to flee as the other continued to battle Ling Han. The battling celestial king was enraged. However, Ling Han wasn't worried at all. He smiled at his opponent and said, "Rest assured, I won't let him escape." He then flicked his right hand. Xiao! The divine demon sword shot forward, slicing through the air at an impressive speed. Pooh! The divine demon sword instantly pierced the left shoulder of the fleeing celestial king. Under the immense momentum, he was sent crashing to the ground, where he was ultimately impaled. In fact, it was only because he had dodged in time that the sword had impaled his left shoulder. Otherwise, it would have directly pierced his heart, and the divine demon sword would have at least consumed his blood essence. "See, what did I tell you?" Ling Han mused to his struggling opponent. The celestial king trembled in terror. He felt like Ling Han wasn't a human at all. Instead, he was a demon from head to toe. How could he be so powerful? So be it if he was powerful. Most importantly, How was he so fearless? He was genuinely displaying no hesitation toward killing others. A thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately fell to one knee, stammering, I'm willing to submit to you, Lord. I'm willing to fight alongside you, my lord. He announced his surrender to Ling Han. This was an inconceivable sight. A second heaven celestial king was actually expressing his loyalty to a newly advanced celestial king? This was utterly comical. Ling Han reached over to pat the celestial king's shoulder. The celestial king was scared to death. He was afraid that Ling Han would suddenly attack and kill him. With each pat, his heart would shudder in fright. Fortunately, Ling Han didn't attack him. However, he couldn't relax at all, and cold sweat continued to flow down his body. Ling Han finally retrieved his hand with a smile, saying, All right, you can follow me in the future. What's your name? Lord this subordinate is called Fu Yuan. The celestial king had initially wanted to refer to himself as this lord. However, he realized this was far too arrogant, so he immediately changed to refer to himself as I. However, this also seemed inappropriate, so he settled for using the tone of a subordinate. After all, he was now a subordinate of Ling Han. Lord. The celestial king who had been impaled by the divine demon sword also crawled up. However, he didn't dare to remove the divine demon sword. He ran up to Ling Han before dropping to one knee, saying, This subordinate is called Chung Tao. I'm also willing to serve my lord and offer up my measly strength. If the Dark Frost Celestial King saw this, he would definitely flare up in rage. Back then, Fu Yuan and Chung Tao had only formed an alliance with him. Even though he had been the alliance leader, there had been no explicit hierarchy among them. Now, however, these two celestial kings were kneeling and announcing their servitude to Ling Han. This could naturally infuriate him to death. Ling Han smiled and said, Very well. Offer me a wisp of your divine senses, and I'll accept you as my underlings. The expressions of Fu Yuan and Cheng Fu changed drastically. Once they offered up their divine sense, even though their life wouldn't be in the hands of Ling Han would be able to easily find them using their divine sense. They wouldn't be able to hide anywhere. If Ling Han were ruthless enough, he could even shatter their divine senses and severely wound them. However, at this moment, could they reject this offer? If they did, death would be their only fate. However, they didn't want to die. Chapter 2479, Breaking Through Together. Chapter 2479, Breaking Through Together. Courage had nothing to do with strength. The rage of a commoner could cause blood to flow 5 steps one. However, as powerful as a celestial king might be, there would also be times when they bowed their heads to save their skin. Ling Han charged back with Chung Tao and Fu Yuan, destroying 7 of the Dark Frost Celestial King's camps in just half a month. Only then were they willing to stop for a rest. Chung Tao and Fu Yuan naturally did most of the hard work. They were afraid that Ling Han would be dissatisfied with them and suspect that they were still loyal to the Dark Frost Celestial King. Ling Han temporarily stopped his advance. This was because they had already occupied more than 9 camps. Occupying any more than this would be useless. Moreover, if they continued to advance, they would get closer and closer to the Dark Frost Celestial King. Even though they had greatly hurt the Dark Frost Celestial King at this moment, they still hadn't crossed his bottom line yet. However, if they occupied all but 2 or 3 of his camps, he would definitely be forced into action. He would stop at nothing to charge forward and fight with them. At that time, things would become much more troublesome. After all, Ling Han's vitality index was still far from reaching 8,000. Moreover, the others indeed needed some time to rest. Feeling pressured by Ling Han's advance, Hu Furong, Ji Wuming, the Rain Emperor, and the others also started to consider breaking through. Their celestial seed marks were also nearing a state of perfection. Of course, this notion of perfection differed for each person. It was dependent on their resources and knowledge. Thus, it was possible that their notions of perfection were completely different. Meanwhile, Ling Han chose to stabilize his cultivation first. He would then forge the divine demon sword into a true celestial tool. Afterward, he would advance the level of his body art. By doing all this, he was confident that he would be able to rival a third heaven celestial king. In fact, with the suppression of the purple light, perhaps even those at the peak stage of the third heaven were no match for him. This was because his body arts wouldn't be affected by the purple light. This was his own power, and it wasn't reliant on the power of regulations. 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 10 years. Time flew by. Ling Han and the others were all fully concentrated on cultivating. They were self-aware, and they understood that they were too weak to charge into the center of the ruins at this moment. They had to become stronger first. 90 years later, Ling Han finally managed to fully stabilize his cultivation. At the same time, he also reached the middle stage of the first heaven, causing his battle prowess to rise significantly again. He started to reforge the divine demon sword. Using the greatest eternity, everlasting physique, he experienced 1,000 days when others only experienced one. The divine demon sword started to change drastically, with symbols appearing on it one after another. They all radiated with an indescribably domineering aura. Celestial tool. At this moment, Ling Han no longer needed to funnel his power into the divine demon sword. With a single thought, the divine demon sword would actively attack his opponents, unleashing a boundless might. Because it was so sharp, and because it was indestructible, even third heaven celestial kings wouldn't dare to face its might. Ling Han wore a faint smile. Just by relying on the divine demon sword alone, he would already possess the right to challenge a third heaven celestial king. However, it was never his habit to rely on external power. This was even though he had raised the divine demon sword from the very beginning. Only his own strength was true strength. He had never forgotten this. He started to practice his body arts. With the dimension scroll in his hands, he started to channel the model given to him by Wally. Mysterious formulas continued to float through his mind, allowing him to extract energy from the dimension scroll. Boom! Paramount power surged into his body. However, he was still unable to grasp this power. Even so, it tempered his muscles, bones, and meridians as it flowed through him. Rumble. Heavenly tribulation was on the verge of forming again. Void particle energy was the most fundamental energy of the Genesis world, and theoretically speaking, only heavenly venerates could wield this energy. Moreover, whenever a heavenly venerate appeared, they would be targeted by heaven and earth. Now that he was interacting with void particle energy, Ling Han was no exception to this rule. Heavenly tribulation formed overhead, yearning to strike him down. Ling Han flirted with danger as he continued to grow his strength. However, after becoming a celestial king, each step forward would require an exorbitant amount of time. This was an extremely slow process. Another 100 years passed, yet Ling Han was still unable to raise the power of his body arts to its limits. There was still room for improvement. Meanwhile, Hua Furong, Ji Wuming, the Empress, and the others all advanced to the Celestial King tier one after another. They all became significantly stronger. The most terrifying among them was none other than Hua Furong. Even though she had only just advanced to the first heaven, she could already rival Ling Han. She indeed lived up to her title as the #1 celestial maiden in history. Of course, this was under the condition that Ling Han didn't use his divine demon sword or body arts. In reality, regulations were only tools that helped them become heavenly venerates. Upon becoming a heavenly venerate, what they would wield was the fundamental power of the Genesis world, which could be used in any one of the realms with the exception of first-tier heavenly venerates. However, regulations were different. If a ninth heaven celestial king from the celestial realm ran over to the foreign realm, they would be nothing but trash. Ling Han had already interacted with the fundamental power of the Genesis world in advance. With regards to this, he had already surpassed Hua Furong by a huge margin. When they reached the peak stage of the Nine Heaven and started to cultivate toward the heavenly venerable tier, Ling Han's advantage would become far more obvious. He would leave Hua Furong in the dust. Meanwhile, Ji Wuming also continued to stay on Ling Han's heels. If they battled at the same cultivation level, he would be no weaker than Ling Han. Again, This was under the condition that Ling Han didn't use his divine demon sword or body arts. Right now, they weren't in a hurry to set off. Instead, those who needed to chose to stabilize their cultivation, and those who needed to chose to continue their advance. Upon witnessing the sparring sessions between Ling Han and the others, the final bit of vexation in Cheng Tao's and Fu Yuan's mind vanished. These people were absolute freaks. Just how crazy was this? These people had only just become celestial kings, yet they were all far more powerful than them. How was this fair? The Empress, Hun Yo, and the Rain Emperor also advanced to the celestial king tier. However, they were slightly weaker than the freaks in Ji Wuming and Huofurong. With that said, this was only by a little bit. The gap between them wasn't big at all. Right now, there were still 500 years until the 10,000-year limit. After some discussions, they decided to rest and cultivate for another 100 years. After everyone's cultivation was stabilized, they would set off for the center of the ruins. From the information they had gathered, none of the forces had conquered the last few areas yet. They were all locked in a stalemate. Thus, there was no need to hurry. Ling Han continued to refine his body arts. Even though a dimension scroll could help a mortal human become a heavenly venerate, signifying the immense energy that it possessed, the manner in which Ling Han was using it was extremely inefficient. As he continually extracted the energy, it would only flow through his body once before dissipating back into heaven and earth. Could this last until he became a 9-heaven celestial king? It would be extremely difficult. He wondered if such dimension scrolls existed in the transcendent dimension. Theoretically speaking, that dimension was being attacked by hysteria and at risk of collapse at any moment, so it would most likely develop a sense of danger. This would then result in more heavenly venerates being produced. Thus, it was possible for dimension scrolls to exist in abundance. He would worry about this later. Ling Han continued to extract power from the dimension scroll to refine his body arts. However, even though he had already accelerated time for himself, his progress was still extremely slow. Perhaps it would really take him another 100 years to reach the limit. However, was this truly slow? He was at the Celestial King tier, where advancing one minor tier every epoch wouldn't be considered slow. Meanwhile, he had only spent several hundred years. Even accounting for the accelerated time, he had only spent a few 100,000 years. Yet, his body arts could already rival those at the second heaven or even third heaven. Just how terrifying was this? In the blink of an eye, 100 years had already passed. Compared to when they had just broken through, they were all much more powerful. This was largely thanks to the peculiar light and peculiar fragrance, which allowed them to rapidly stabilize their cultivation and even see improvement. Time for battle. Chapter 2480, Profuse Apology. Chapter 2480, Profuse Apology. If Ling Han and the others could only be regarded as troublemakers when they arrived here several hundred years ago, they could definitely be regarded as mighty dragons now. In terms of the power of regulations alone, Ling Han and Huofurong were tied in the first place. They both possessed a vitality index of almost 8,000. However, if body arts were taken into account, Ling Han would definitely be the most powerful among them. His vitality index would exceed 8,000, reaching a whopping 8,400. This was already approaching the level of celestial kings at the peak stage of the third heaven. Of course, this was only theoretically speaking. How could celestial kings be ordinary people? After all, even king tiers found it almost impossible to become celestial kings. At a minimum, they had to be emperor tiers. Thus, the vitality index of third heaven celestial kings would most likely be around 8,600. This was slightly more powerful than Ling Han. However, if he took into account the divine demon sword as well, Ling Han was confident that he could rival any third heaven celestial king. Right now, his weakness was surprisingly his physique. After becoming a celestial king, he required an exorbitant amount of treasures to practice the indestructible heaven scroll. Even though he had taken the treasures of many ancestral kings a while ago, he had already consumed most of them. Moreover, these were treasures from a different realm, so they were still a little bit different. In any case, they weren't sufficient to fund his current cultivation needs. Only when he left the celestial path, and perhaps only when he ventured to the transcendent dimension, could he cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll to a higher level. Even so, his physique had still genuinely advanced to the Celestial King tier. His defense index had exceeded 5,000, and this was still extremely astonishing. Before they could set off, a significant piece of news reached their ears. After so many years of vicious battle, the various forces had finally managed to conquer the remaining areas. According to rumors, these central structures were fairly extraordinary. Not only could they resist the purple light, but they even possessed other peculiar abilities. Some could automatically refine alchemical pills as long as the necessary ingredients were provided, while others could refine tools as long as the necessary materials were put in. Some could even attack by themselves, launching beams of light that could obliterate all matter. Right now, the situation was already settled, and the various forces were conducting the final round of talks. They had reached a ceasefire agreement, and they had all agreed to fight for the paramount treasure in the central region together. This also signified that the Dark Frost Celestial King was finally free to target Ling Han and the others. This information had been gathered by Fu Yuan and Cheng Tao. Their faces were scrunched up in anxiety. This time, they would definitely lose the opportunity to leave the celestial path. In fact, even their forces on the celestial path would be targeted by the Dark Frost Celestial King. In the future, they might become lonesome souls. Even though they knew that Ling Han and the others were extremely powerful, they could at most only defeat those at the second heaven. If they encountered third heaven celestial kings, they would definitely suffer defeat. What they were most afraid of eventually arrived. Several days later, a messenger came bearing a letter from the Dark Frost Celestial King. His words were extremely arrogant and haughty, and he demanded that Ling Han and the others go and profusely apologize to him. Otherwise, he would lock the transfer formation in the center of the ruins, forcing them to stay on the celestial path forever. This was a ruthless tactic. Although it was necessary to travel through the celestial path to become a celestial king, there was only a limited amount of resources here, so the scope of what they could achieve was also limited. Ling Han and the others were all monarch stars or supreme monarch stars, so if they were trapped here forever, this would definitely be a worse fate than killing them. If you understand, then give me a reply, the messenger said in a haughty tone. Even though he was only at the ascending origin tier, he stood extremely tall and proud before the group of celestial kings. It was as if he were the true celestial king. In his eyes, since the Dark Frost Celestial King had cast his gaze over, these newly advanced celestial kings could only wet their pants and fall to their knees in fright, begging for forgiveness. As a messenger, he naturally had to accept Ling Han and the others' surrender first. Ling Han smiled faintly as he raised his right hand. Boom! A ball of flames materialized, instantly incinerating the letter. However, a powerful aura rose from the ashes, transforming into a fist that smashed at Ling Han. This was the handiwork of a celestial king. They had imbued their paramount power into the letter. Even though this fist couldn't unleash the true power of a third heaven celestial king, it was still immensely powerful. Indeed, it wasn't an attack that ordinary first heaven celestial kings could block. In the eyes of the Dark Frost Celestial King, if Ling Han dared to destroy his letter, he would punish the other party with this powerful punch. Even if it didn't strike Ling Han, it would still force him to become extremely disheveled as he dodged desperately. This was a display of strength. This was the lofty might of a third heaven celestial king. Ling Han extended a finger and lightly tapped at the fist. Pa! The fist immediately crumbled, unable to hurt even a single hair of Ling Han's. If the Dark Frost Celestial King had personally come to attack him, Ling Han would definitely have faced him in a solemn manner. However, this was simply an attack that had been imbued in a piece of paper. Thus, did he need to treat it seriously? Go back and tell your master. I'll return the favor in a few days' time, Ling Han said with a smile. The messenger was transfixed with shock. He had personally heard the Dark Frost Celestial King say that if Ling Han dared to destroy the letter, he would definitely suffer grave consequences. However, even though these words rang in his ears, his eyes had witnessed a completely different result. Heavens! Just how terrifying is this youth? He hurriedly nodded in reply, turning around as quickly as he could to leave. At this moment, he truly wished that he had wings to soar away from Ling Han as quickly as he could. He rapidly made his way back, and when he arrived at a camp controlled by the Dark Frost Celestial King, he used a special method to communicate with the Dark Frost Celestial King. "When is the brat coming?" the Dark Frost Celestial King asked. In his eyes, he had Ling Han and the others in the palm of his hand. They had no option but to yield. The messenger stammered in apprehension. He truly didn't know where to begin. Why are you hesitating? Hurry up and answer me," the Dark Frost Celestial King said in a solemn voice. He absolutely despised subordinates who were slow and ineffective. The messenger gritted his teeth and said, "That person burnt the letter, my lord." The Dark Frost Celestial King faltered upon hearing this. Just how audacious were these outsiders? They even dared to destroy his letter. However, he immediately started to roar with laughter. That person had most likely been wounded by his attack, right? Even if he hadn't, he would still have wound up disheveled. He nodded and asked, how severely was he wounded? The messenger wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and replied, he was completely unscathed. He also said that he would return the favor in a few days. The Dark Frost Celestial King faltered again. What? Completely unscathed? How is this possible? Even though that attack hadn't possessed his full strength, it had still been the attack of a third heaven Celestial King, after all. Just how overwhelming had it been? Are you trying to trick me? The Dark Frost Celestial King chided in a cold voice. Perhaps you didn't deliver the letter at all? Was this subordinate so afraid of death that he didn't even visit Ling Han and the others? Was he making up excuses now? This subordinate wouldn't dare. This subordinate wouldn't dare. The messenger exclaimed as he hurriedly fell to his knees. Even though they were extremely far away from each other, it was as if he could still feel the burning rage of the Dark Frost Celestial King. This terrified him to the core. He continued to say that this was indeed what had transpired, and that he wasn't lying about anything at all. Only then did the Dark Frost Celestial King silently fall in thought. He also believed that this subordinate wouldn't dare to trick him, especially under his interrogation. However, how could a measly First Heaven Celestial King, who had only just advanced, possess such great strength? Are there monarch stars among the outsiders? He murmured to himself. A while ago, he had dispatched 2 Celestial Kings along with Dongfang Rue to hunt Ling Han down. Now, however, Ling Han was still alive and healthy, while there was no news about the 3 people who had been pursuing him. This was proof enough of Ling Han and his companion's strength. However, regardless of how powerful he is, how can he rival a third heaven Celestial King? I'll be waiting for him. Chapter 2481, First Battle Against Third Heaven Celestial King. Chapter 2481, First Battle Against Third Heaven Celestial King. Ling Han and the others set off for the center of the ruins. Each time they came across a camp, they would ask whether it belonged to the Dark Frost Celestial King. If it did, they would directly conquer it. If it didn't, they would act according to the people's attitude. If they were friendly, they would simply borrow some rooms to rest. If they were hostile, they would directly take over the camp. Half a month passed, and the Dark Frost Celestial King lost another 5 camps. Right now, only a measly 4 camps remained under his control. This caused his expression to become dark and furious. After tasking his 3 remaining Second Heaven Celestial Kings with defending the main base, he snuck away to search for Ling Han and the others. He was extremely quick, and it only took him 7 days to reach his 3rd camp. He stayed there, silently waiting for Ling Han and the others to arrive. It wasn't that he didn't want to go to the 4th camp, but rather that it had already fallen. At this time, the Dark Frost Celestial King naturally understood what Ling Han meant by returning the favor. This enraged him to no end. However, with so many of his camps being defeated, It was quite surprising that not a single wisp of his separated divine sense had returned to inform him of what had happened. This confused him greatly. However, he didn't pay much heed to this either. As long as Ling Han and the others dared to attack this camp, he would teach these outsiders a lesson. He would teach them that it was seniors, like him, who controlled the celestial path. Elsewhere, Ling Han and the others were extremely relaxed as they wandered around. Right now, all of the structures that they had taken control of were vertically aligned. Even though they had already exceeded the maximum of 9, such structures could still bring them great benefits. If they obtained enlightenment, they would stop to comprehend it and also rest for a few days. They were in no hurry to reach the center of the ruins. After all, there were still several hundred years left. Several days passed, and they set off once again. The suppression of the purple light brought great discomfort to all of them. Moreover, the more time that passed, the more powerful the suppression of the purple light became. Thus, they started to hasten their speed. In just 2 days, they saw a building appear before them. This building was 5 stories tall, and it radiated with a ceramic glaze that prevented the purple light from infiltrating it. Ling Han walked over with a smile and asked, "Can I ask you a question? Is this the territory of the Dark Frost Celestial King?" "Impudence! You actually dare to utter the Lord's name?" The guards immediately chided. Ling Han nodded before turning around and saying, "All right, this is also Dark Frost's territory. Lord Chung, Lord Fu." The eyes of the guards involuntarily widened when they saw Fu Yuan and Chung Tao. What in the world was going on? Why were the 2 celestial kings trailing behind like subordinates? Moreover, they were at the very end, signifying that they had no standing at all. Chung Tao and Fu Yuan both wore awkward expressions. Even though they had belonged to the Dark Frost Celestial King's force before, they had both enjoyed a transcendent status. They hadn't been subordinates of the Dark Frost Celestial King. Now, however, their situation was completely different. They genuinely felt ashamed to face others. A Celestial King walked over and asked, "Friend Chung, Friend Fu, what's the meaning of this?" There was a single ribbon of iridescent light around him. His name was Sun Dong, and he was the guarding Celestial King of this building. Chung Tao and Fu Yuan both ignored him as if they hadn't heard his question. Firstly, there was indeed no need for them to explain. Secondly, Ling Han was their master, so they didn't dare to supersede his command either. Ling Han smiled and said, "This territory is mine now. Are you going to leave by yourself, or do you want me to send you away?" "How audacious," someone said in a cold voice. It was as if this voice had traveled over from the depths of the world. "Dark Frost Celestial King," Chung Tao and Fu Yuan exclaimed in unison. Even though they were mentally prepared to meet him sooner or later, they hadn't expected to come across him so soon. A Celestial King appeared at the entrance, with 3 ribbons of iridescent light hovering around his body. Boundless bursts of ice-cold aura also gathered around him, appearing as terrifying as could be. He was none other than the Dark Frost Celestial King. Ling Han roared with laughter and said, "After obliterating so many wisps of your divine sense, I'm finally able to meet you in person. It was truly difficult to find you. Young man, you think I won't dare to kill you just because you have a powerful background in the outside world?" The Dark Frost Celestial King asked in a cold voice. He was one of the most powerful beings on the celestial path, so he never needed to consider the consequences when he did something. Moreover, if he obtained the huge opportunity this time, he would no longer need to worry about Ninth Heaven Celestial Kings, Heavenly Venerates, or whatnot. Ling Han shrugged and said, "If I truly bring a Heavenly Venerate over, and you still dare to speak like this, I'll truly respect your bravery. In any case, enough with the nonsense. Since you're finally here, I'll give you 2 options to choose from. The first option is to become my subordinate, and the second option is death. All right, you can choose one now." Ha ha ha. The Dark Frost Celestial King tilted his head back and roared with laughter. Where was this brat getting his confidence from? "I'll go," Furong said as she charged over. She immediately swallowed a subduing purple fruit. They had obtained several of these fruits on their way here, so each person had no fewer than 5 opportunities to unleash explosive power. She wasn't underestimating her opponent, and she directly retrieved her celestial tool as well. An ancient mirror hovered above her head, pulsating with the power of regulations. "Fire!" she roared. The origin flames of heaven and earth burst forth, transforming her entire body into one of flames. These were devastating flames that could even incinerate regulations themselves. The Dark Frost Celestial King was astonished upon seeing this. This young girl was clearly just a first heaven celestial king. So why was her power making him feel a sense of apprehension? Her battle prowess was indeed inferior to his. However, after taking into account her celestial tool, she was definitely strong enough to threaten him. Was she truly a first heaven celestial king? Huafurong charged over, and the Dark Frost Celestial King had no option but to meet her attacks. He summoned the Great Tao of Water, creating a streak of black water wherein each drop was as heavy as a planet. These were incredibly deadly droplets. Pong! The two celestial kings exchanged a blow. Sure enough, Huafurong's battle prowess left her at a disadvantage. However, thanks to her celestial tool, she was easily able to rival her opponent. Ancient symbols continued to appear in the ancient mirror, emitting a mysterious chant that was seemingly divulging the most primordial secrets of heaven and earth. The ancient mirror glowed with a destructive radiance that even the Dark Frost Celestial King didn't dare to face head-on. He had to block its attacks with his full strength, or else he would also suffer severe injuries. The Dark Frost Celestial King was completely unable to suppress his opponent. His defenses were breached by Huafurong, and the two of them continued their vicious battle on the building. Boom, boom, boom. Just the shock waves of their attacks alone were powerful enough to frighten Second Heaven Celestial Kings. Ling and the others were in no hurry to interfere. They easily shooed the others away before finding the control core of the building. Ling marked it with a wisp of his divine sense, and this allowed him to connect all of their conquered camps. If someone else completed this step, this building would be treated as part of another force. This was a fairly comical scene. The battle had yet to conclude, yet the building had already changed owners. The Dark Frost Celestial King was both astonished and enraged. With a roar, he turned around to flee. He was giving up? Of course he was giving up. Even his camp had been conquered by his enemies, and Huafurong's battle prowess was also immensely powerful. He wasn't confident that he could suppress her. Moreover, there were so many people on Ling Han's side. So what would he do if there were a few more powerful celestial kings? Thus, he decided to retreat. He would return after he found a few helpers. Ling Han didn't pursue him. He could escape from this camp, but could he escape from this realm? In any case, the Dark Frost Celestial King definitely wouldn't abandon his final camp. At that time, they would head over there to find him. They rested for a brief while to dispel the effects of the purple light. Afterward, they would continue to advance, intent on settling their differences with the Dark Frost Celestial King in a single breath. 2 days later, they absorbed some peculiar light and peculiar fragrance again, not only improving their cultivation significantly, but even dispelling the negative effects of the purple light. Thereupon, they set off again. Chapter 2482, Bearing Down. Chapter 2482, Bearing Down. Ling Han and the others continued to advance, conquering another 2 of the Dark Frost Celestial King's camps. Now, the Dark Frost Celestial King only had a line camp remaining. However, this was also his most valuable camp. Sitting in this final tower, the Dark Frost Celestial King wore an ice-cold expression. In fact, it was so dark that it was as if water were about to drip from his face. Ever since attaining Tao, when had he faced such a difficult situation before? He was a third heaven celestial king. Yet, he had actually been forced into such an awkward situation. Fortunately, he had only snuck out in secret. Initially, his goal had been to prevent others from noticing that he had left so that his main camp wouldn't be attacked by others. Now, however, he had managed to conceal a great embarrassment. He had already targeted them himself, Yet he was still unable to suppress a few first heaven celestial kings. If others learned of this, would he not become a huge joke? However, he couldn't help but frown when he recalled the battle prowess of Huafurong. Celestial kings with celestial tools truly possessed a completely different battle prowess. This was also the reason why so many celestial kings wanted to obtain a celestial tool no matter what. He didn't reckon that he could suppress Huafurong even if he fought her again. Fortunately, the 12 different forces had already reached an agreement a few days ago, forming an alliance to target anyone who dared to think about attacking any of the 12 towers. If one tower was attacked, the others would all send reinforcements. In other words, even if Huafurong and the others attacked him, he could easily call for reinforcements. However, to call for reinforcements to defend against a few first heaven celestial kings was far too embarrassing. No. He shook his head upon thinking of this. However, a glimmer immediately appeared in his eyes. Right. Why couldn't he invite the celestial kings from the other forces over? He could use the excuse of holding a meeting. That way, if Huafurong and the others attacked, he was certain that the other celestial kings would also step forward to help him. At that time, he could drag all of these celestial kings to his side. What a brilliant plan. He immediately sent invitations to the leaders of the various forces. They all gave him face, and before long, 19 third heaven celestial kings arrived one after another. Why were there 19 of them? Because some third heaven celestial kings hadn't reached the peak stage yet, they had already been in teams of 2 when they had arrived at this central region. Being as sly as he was, the Dark Frost Celestial King didn't let slip any information about Ling and the others. He maintained a demeanor of calm, and he continued to engage in fruitful conversations with the other celestial kings. However, he was secretly hoping that Ling and the others would arrive as quickly as possible. This was because he couldn't keep the 19 celestial kings here forever. After all, they weren't the only third heaven celestial kings on the celestial path. This was also why they had to form an alliance. Otherwise, what did it matter regardless of how many second heaven and first heaven celestial kings there were? Did they need to be afraid? The Dark Frost Celestial King didn't need to wait for long before Ling and the others arrived. Lord! An ascending origin tier elite exclaimed as he ran over with a flustered expression. The Dark Frost Celestial King could naturally guess what was happening. However, he kept his emotions in check, and he instead chided in anger. Why are you acting all flustered? Lord, some people have charged over, and they say they want you to too. The ascending origin tier cultivator wanted to continue, yet he didn't dare to keep going. Speak, the Dark Frost Celestial King said with a frown. The ascending origin tier cultivator mustered his courage and said, they want you to clean your neck and go out to accept death. Oh, who dares to be so audacious? They actually dare to seek the life of Brother Dark Frost? A third heaven celestial king said with a smile. He was extremely short, yet he was also astonishingly plump at the same time. This caused him to look like a round ball. His earlobes were also massive, and they hung all the way down to his shoulder. The Dark Frost Celestial King smiled coldly and said, it's most likely just a few clowns. Dark Frost, that's no way to speak. Since they dare to come here to challenge you, they most likely have some strength. Why don't we head over to meet them? Another third heaven celestial king said. He was the polar opposite of the celestial king who had spoken just then. He was tall and skinny, and he looked much like a length of bamboo. That's right. Let's go out to meet them, the other celestial kings all said. With all of us heading over, let's hope that we don't frighten them to death. They all joked and laughed as they headed out. On the celestial path, they were most likely an invincible group of people. Thus, they were naturally fearless. It wasn't long before they arrived at the foot of the tower, only to see the guards collapsed and unconscious. Meanwhile, a group of youths stood tall and proud, radiating with an extraordinary aura. This tower wasn't one that specialized in defense or offense, and it was because of this that it had been breached so easily. In fact, this was a tower that specialized in tool refinement. The ninth descent celestial king hummed in surprise. This was because he saw Ling Han in the crowd. This was the youth for whom he had done a favor in the past. At that time, Ling Han had only been a pseudo-celestial king. However, even though he had only been a pseudo-celestial king, he had already possessed the power to suppress a first heaven celestial king. Now that he had become a celestial king, just how much had his battle prowess risen? Perhaps he could suppress second heaven celestial kings? Could he perhaps rival third heaven celestial kings? If it were anyone else, the ninth descent celestial king definitely wouldn't ponder this. After all, wasn't this a silly daydream? Who didn't understand the insurmountable gulf between each heaven? How could a measly first heaven celestial king challenge a mighty third heaven celestial king? Was this a joke? However, this person was Ling Han. He had already displayed his freakish abilities while at the pseudo-celestial king tier. Moreover, without enough confidence, would Ling Han have charged over? He would stand aside to observe the situation. In any case, Ling Han still owed him a favor. As such, the initiative was in his hands. Dark Frost, I've come to collect your head, Ling Han roared. This time, he didn't allow Hua Furong to charge in before him. In fact, he had also seen the jittery excitement of Ji Wuming, the Rain Emperor, Hun Yo, and the others, so he immediately stepped forward first. Otherwise, this opportunity would have been stolen by his battle-hungry companions again. The obese celestial king stepped forward and said, "A bunch of naive youths." His title was Buddhist Cloud, and he didn't rank highly among the third heaven celestial kings. He was only at the early stage of the third heaven. Thus, he had occupied a treasured tower with another celestial king of similar strength. However, this was only a group of first heaven celestial kings that he could dispose of with a casual wave of his hand, so he naturally didn't feel worried at all. Ling Han wore a faint smile as he looked at the obese celestial king, saying, "This matter has nothing to do with you. But I want to interfere. Do you have any complaints?" The obese celestial king said with a loud laugh. These outsiders were far too arrogant. Did they think they could look down on everyone just because they were monarch tiers or monarch stars? More than just cultivation aptitude, cultivation level was also important. Ling Han shook his head and said, "So you insist on poking your head forward for a beating? You've asked for this yourself." "Impudence," the Buddhist Cloud Celestial King roared. Boom! Boundless divine light erupted from his body, and a Buddhist halo also materialized behind his head. It was as if he had truly transformed into a Buddha that was going to subdue spirits and eliminate demons. Ling Han turned around to glance at Ji Wuming. He was the ancient ancestor of Buddhism. However, Ji Wuming remained calm and uninterested. Instead, it was Shi Chanzi who whispered, "Oh, 3 epochs ago, a disciple of ours entered the celestial path, yet never exited again. As it turns out, he didn't die. Instead, he was trapped here and even became a celestial king." In other words, the Buddhist Cloud Celestial King was truly a disciple or grand disciple of Ji Wuming. Ling Han nodded in understanding. Even though Ji Wuming hadn't spoken, he still decided to show some mercy. This was to give Ji Wuming some face. "Come," Ling Han said as he gestured with his finger. He and Ji Wuming viewed each other as competitors, so he was now viewing this Buddhist Cloud Celestial King as a junior, even though the latter's cultivation level was higher. "You're truly trying to defy the heavens," the Buddhist Cloud Celestial King said, laughing with rage. He leaped up, genuinely appearing like a Buddhist cloud as he descended toward Ling Han. Boundless divine light shone into the surrounding. He was going to crush Ling Han to death without launching a single attack. Chapter 2483, Who's the Clown? Chapter 2483, Who's the Clown? "Please wait, friend Buddhist Cloud," a celestial king suddenly exclaimed, blocking his path. He was a middle-aged man who had an innocent and handsome expression. There was a single ribbon of iridescent light around him, signifying that he was a first heaven celestial king. A first heaven celestial king dared to block a third heaven celestial king. The Buddhist Cloud Celestial King faltered for a moment before saying, "Perhaps you recognize this brat, so you're stepping forward to speak for him?" He was only willing to stop because this celestial king belonged to his force. Even though he was only at the first heaven, he still had to give him some face. The first heaven celestial king smiled and said, "Of course not. However, he's only a first heaven celestial king, so I feel like there's no need for friend Buddhist Cloud to personally deal with him." These words fed the Buddhist Cloud celestial king's ego and made him feel extremely satisfied. His chubby cheeks shook as he laughed loudly, and he said, "All right, then retrieve this brat's head as a present for friend Dark Frost." "Gladly," the celestial king said with a slight bow. Before a third heaven celestial king, he still had to maintain a certain level of respect. The Dark Frost celestial king saw all of this, yet he showed no signs of stepping forward to interfere. In fact, he was eagerly waiting for the Buddhist Cloud celestial king to be humiliated. That way, he would be forced to stand on his side. The ninth descent celestial king also smiled faintly, yet he also didn't step forward to stop the conflict. He was curious to find out just how powerful Ling had become. The first heaven celestial king stepped forward, a cold and baleful expression in his eyes as he gazed at Ling. He was called Lu Shi, and he had originally come from the celestial realm. He was only a king tier, and he had come to the celestial path in search of a rare opportunity. The first few times he had come, he had adventured in the outskirts of the celestial path, leaving before the 10,000-year limit expired. The final time he had come, however, he had recklessly adventured deeper, following others across the sea. Nonetheless, even though he succeeded in crossing the sea, he failed to become a celestial king within 10,000 years. Thus, he was unable to teleport away. He was trapped here, yet the heavens suddenly shone favor on him, allowing him to find and ingest a celestial medicine that greatly improved his cultivation aptitude. After several billion years of difficult cultivation, he finally broke through to the celestial king tier. Thus, Lu Shi greatly detested prodigies. In any case, he couldn't leave this place anymore, so he decided to specifically target outsiders in order to soothe his disappointed heart. Ling shook his head, looking back and asking, "Who wants to battle him?" First heaven celestial kings couldn't elicit his desire to do battle. The Rain Emperor, Ji Wuming, Hun Yo, and the others all shook their heads. They couldn't be bothered fighting a first heaven celestial king. There was no fun and challenge at all. Ling involuntarily sighed. Since no one volunteered, he had no option but to step forward himself. After all, who told him to jump out first? However, Lu Shi didn't understand this dynamic, and he thought that these people were afraid of him. He couldn't help but roar with laughter. He leaped forward, summoning the great Tao of fire and transforming it into a blade that slashed down at Ling. A measly new celestial king dares to act so wantonly? Let me teach you some discipline. He dashed forward, and he was truly very nimble. He instantly arrived before Ling. Ling raised his hand, completely ignoring the flaming blade. His hand pierced through the flames and directly latched onto Lu Shi's chest, slamming him to the ground. Pong! Lu Shi was instantly smashed into the ground, with stars spinning before his eyes. He faltered for a brief moment, and when he finally wanted to crawl up, he discovered that there was a humongous weight on his chest, preventing him from moving. Looking down, he realized that there was a foot on his chest. Moreover, it was this foot that was preventing him from moving. At this moment, his memories came flooding back. Gasp! He had been defeated in a single strike. When this thought flashed through his mind, he felt so embarrassed that he wanted to die. Just then, he had still been boasting with arrogance, saying that he would teach Ling some discipline. Now, however, he had been defeated in a single strike. A genius idea suddenly occurred to him, and he immediately pretended that he had been knocked unconscious. He cocked his head and fell limp to the ground. The celestial kings were all astonished upon seeing this. Even though Lu Shi wasn't especially strong, he was still a first heaven celestial king. After all, even those at the peak stage of the first heaven wouldn't be able to defeat him with such ease. It's due to the difference in their aptitude, a third heaven celestial king said. The other celestial kings nodded in agreement. Ling Han was most likely a prodigy among the outsiders. Perhaps he was a monarch tier, maybe even a rumored monarch star. Because of this, he was able to easily defeat a first heaven celestial king as a newly advanced celestial king. However, the third heaven celestial kings thought nothing more of this. Regardless of how freakish Ling Han was, he would still be limited by his cultivation level. At most, he would only possess a battle prowess at the early stage of the second heaven. It couldn't be any higher. Another celestial king stepped forward and said, "Humph, hurry up and release him." There were 2 ribbons of iridescent light around him, and it was clear that he was a second heaven celestial king. Since he was willing to step forward, he was naturally confident that he could achieve victory. With a cultivation at the peak stage of the second heaven, could he not defeat a first heaven celestial king? The third heaven celestial kings all nodded in satisfaction. This celestial king was called Ma Dang, and he was extremely renowned among the second heaven celestial kings. Many people believed that he would eventually advance to the third heaven. This was only a matter of time. Since Ma Dang has stepped forward, he'll be able to handle all of them with ease, a celestial king remarked. Heh, there's no need to waste too much effort on these younglings. What I'm curious about is, why did they dare to charge over? I refuse to believe that there's no one supporting them in the background. Indeed, there's definitely a scheme behind all this. The third heaven celestial kings all nodded in agreement. Prodigies who could become monarch tiers, or even monarch stars, were no fools. They clearly knew that this was a dangerous location, yet they still insisted on charging over head-on. There was definitely someone supporting them. Perhaps they were being directed by the other third heaven celestial kings. As they discussed this, Ma Dang launched his first attack. He remained standing in the same spot, and he simply made a tapping motion with his finger. Boom! A ginormous meteor crashed down from the sky, crashing toward Ling Han. It carried with it the great Tao of Earth, and it yearned to crush Ling Han to smithereens. Not only that, but the earth around Ling Han also changed drastically. The gravitational force increased immensely, and just this alone was enough to push ordinary first heaven celestial kings to tears and despair. Ling Han naturally wouldn't have any reaction to this. However, it was impossible for Lu Shi to continue feigning unconsciousness. He instantly started to wail in agony. However, because he was being stepped on by Ling Han, he was completely unable to move. He could only flail his arms and legs as blood gushed from his mouth. It was indeed difficult for second heaven celestial kings to kill first heaven celestial kings who were intent on fleeing. However, Lu Shi was rendered immobile by Ling Han's foot now, so how could he flee? Staring at the fast-approaching meteor, Lu Shi was so terrified that his face became green with terror. If he were struck, he would suffer severe wounds even if he weren't killed. He would definitely end up in a miserable state. Fuck. If you want to die, then go die yourself. Why drag me along? Lu Shi wanted to cry, yet no tears were forthcoming. At this moment, he truly regretted his decision to step forward. Fuck. A third heaven celestial king had already stepped forward, so why had he insisted on snatching the job? As he stared at the meteor in the sky, all of his past experiences flashed before his eyes. If he were given another chance, he would definitely become a carefree celestial king. Just how relaxing and enjoyable would that be? What was the point of thinking about all this useless **t? Even though he wouldn't be able to leave the celestial path, first heaven celestial kings were still powerful enough to wander around as they pleased. In any case, even if he returned to the outside world, there would still be ninth heaven celestial kings above him. As such, what standing would he have? He truly shouldn't have given in to greed. He truly shouldn't have participated in this mess. However, it was a shame that it was already too late to have any regrets. Hang on. Lu Shi was already about to close his eyes to await his inevitable demise. However, he suddenly discovered that the meteor in the sky was traveling at an incredibly slow speed. Perhaps time slows down when someone is about to die? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.